All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Select Board meeting on Tuesday evening, May 25th. And I'm going to review the agenda. To begin with, we'll have community input for those of you that are on the call remotely. You can just put on your video and raise your hand if you'd like to give input, or go down to the chat and indicate it that way. And then we have a new member to welcome. Then following that, we'll do the officers for the Select Board for the coming year. Chief Sarr is going to join us to talk about the Covet testing and what happens after the federal funding ends and what we want to do. And then Ken Mostello, the chair of the Board of Assessors, will be here to discuss the classification of the assistant assessor position. Madeline Blake, the chair of the planning board, will join us to share their thinking about staff reorganization and a planner position. We are going to be formally accepting the master plan. It does not involve any discussion on our part, but as part of the process, we'll be accepting the master plan. I do have an update about Timbernook, and I think this part of the agenda will be much shorter based on the update. We're going to follow up the discussion we had several weeks ago about regionalization, the sort of what are the next steps we want to consider. Just firming up a date for the fall town meeting, the town administrator's report, which has quite a number of items in it. So we'll use some of that time from Timbernook, I'm sure, there. With liaison reports. And then for the first time, we're going to try a consent agenda, sort of the way we've done it at the town meeting, where we've got some routine things, the approval of minutes and the warrant items that I've approved that were in the packet, and then appointments and resignations. And the same way we do that at town meeting, where if any one of us wants to pull out an item for discussion, we can do that. And if not, we'll adopt them under a consent agenda. And then the goal is to adjourn by 10:10. So with that, I would like to issue a very warm welcome to Travis Snell, who's a newly elected member of the Select Board. And we're very much happy to have you as part of the board and look forward to working together. And it's exciting to be, starting a new year with new energy and a fresh face. And we really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just turned it off. Thank you very much.
But I'm going to go back now and ask if there is anyone on the call, because we don't have any guests in the room, any residents in the room. Is there anyone on the call that would like to offer community input? All right, well,
I would just like to build on, if I can, the welcome to Travis. It's very exciting to have you here. Thank you for your willingness to serve. I know you've already served a lot to the town, and it's just really great having you here with us at this table. Yeah.
You're here. All righty, so the next item on the agenda is the officers for the Select Board going forward for this year.
I have been giving some thought to this. I'm feeling a little anxious about the fact that we're in kind of in some form of transition. We lost our TA, Tim, in April. We've been having an interim TA. We're still looking for a permanent TA. And I was thinking that to inject some stability, that I might like to move to nominate a slate of the current officers to act as in their same positions for next year. So that would be Barney as chair, David as vice chair, and Nathan as clerk.
And so is that a motion you're putting on the floor?
Yeah,
Okay.
for discussion.
Is there a second?
Can we ask a question? Or
Yeah, then we have discussion. Once it's
Well,
on the floor, or no, do you want to
you can do it either way.
typically we'd have a second and then there's discussion and we can, yeah, is that all right? if we do, because the second just means it's open for discussion.
Well, sure, then
Well,
I'll
we-
second that.
Okay,
But I do have some questions.
sure,
about it.
absolutely. So now there's discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about the history, because obviously I'm new to the select board, but tell me, is this procedurally what customarily happens, and not only procedurally, but is there a history of having, people serve in the chair role multiple times, or is it a progression? And is there anything that's established that we have in writing or in bylaws or anything else that would, help us make that decision for someone new, like me?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those two things would be helpful.
Well,
Oh, okay.
do you want to comment?
Yeah, I go
or-
ahead.
Okay.
I mean, which is why yes, we do, and that's why I did the preamble that I did. We have a letter that the at the time, selectmen wrote, I think like in 1987 or 97, something like that, in our policy book. And I'm in fact the one that's always been harping on, that there's a lot of committees in town that have not been rotating their chairmanships, even though the select board has written a policy saying that they think they should, that chairmanships should rotate. However, having said that, I know my own experience as when I was chair, I had some initiatives that I would have liked to have seen get followed through on. And a year is not enough to do some of that. There's a learning curve, so it takes you a while to kind of get your feet wet and get people organized and, with you and yeah, there's time to set the goal and then time to move on with it. And if the next chairman doesn't support that goal, it just gets dropped midway. And in fact, the reason I'm so familiar with the policy is because the policy was one of the things I wanted to upgrade, review and upgrade, to reflect, how we do business today and to, we've been talking about certain things at the table recently about process. None of it's written down. So it's always kind of, sometimes it's a mystery. Sometimes, it doesn't get followed, even though, because there's no one place to go find that. So, yeah, yes, there is a policy but that doesn't mean that it's not part of the bylaw.
It's rare.
Yeah.
So I think, so I'm not aware of a policy that says that the select board has to change the chair. We have asked all the other committees and boards to try to change the chair every year. The standard, though, it does deviate from this, depending upon whether or not somebody wants to be the next, move up, or just timing for somebody. The standard is the clerk becomes the vice chair becomes the chair becomes a regular member, and then you just kind of rotate through that. There's many more, I'm gonna put this closer. There are more exceptions to that flow than there are of a chair continuing to be chair year over year. The last time it happened was when Vanessa Maroney and I were elected in the same year, and John Gorecki was the chair. He notified us that he was not going to run again after his term, which gave us 2 years with John, with the first him being chair. And at that point, oddly enough, Vanessa and I were the senior ranking people. And so we talked to John and asked him if he would be the chair for 1 more year, so that Vanessa and I think I was the vice chair and Vanessa was the clerk, but we were under his mentoring, because after just 1 year with nobody else to help us, like nobody else having been in that role before, we were a little bit nervous about that, and he agreed to serve for a 2nd year. There may have been a time before I started where I'm not sure if Tim Holt ever did 2 consecutive years or not. I don't know prior to my joining, but since I joined 9 years ago now, it has happened once where the chair was the chair 2 years in a row. So, I guess if I may, I mean, I think I chatted briefly with Barney about this. I think that nothing against Barney's chairpersonship in this past year. I think it's very important to keep that change happening. I think that there are people who have the experience and can keep the things moving, but I want to just make kind of 2 points about it. One is that because there's a change in chairperson, does not mean that what everybody does and is interested in has to change, right? Because we are all individually elected people to the board with the things that we want to work on. And so if there are issues that Barney has been working on or that Dave Modell has been working on as the chair and the vice chair, there's nothing in the bylaws that says they can't continue to do that, right? It's not like everything starts all over again because the chair has started. The chair's role is primarily putting together the agenda, working with the team to set kind of the goals for the next year, and managing the meetings. And then they're there if there's an emergency. The chair's the person that Brian would call if there's an emergency. He's never called me when I was chair before, but that's the person. And then the chair's responsibility is letting everybody else know what happened, right? They don't have any more authority than any other member of the board. And so if for that reason, I think that, the idea of keeping the change and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to kind of go through that process and be a chair at some point. I understand 1 year is short, but it's only 3 years for a term, right? And one of the reasons why it's that turnover is so that everybody who serves gets to understand what it's like to be the vice chair. They get to understand what it's like to be the chair, and having that process, I think, is important. Because over time, you get turnover and you want people with experience in those roles. You don't want to have a situation like with Vanessa and I, where we were just like deer in a headlight. Oh my God, how could we possibly be chair? We've had no mentoring for this role. And so I think that for that reason, I think that the rotating is important. And I think that there are 2 people on the board who have been chair and been successful chairs before. So I would propose that we not do that one, and I would make a different nomination.
Okay, can I ask then? Well, I mean, just curious, what do you think then? What would you want to see?
I think what I would do is, not having spoken to anybody about this, is I would nominate Kate to be the chair and me to move up from clerk to vice chair. And I think that would make you then clerk. Just because that's the typical process. I think, that's what I would do. But, that's just me.
I just want to offer a couple of
Yep.
thoughts about sort of where we are in the sort of town's life or history. And I do think, given the last year and the degree to which I, as the chair, had to be very involved in a lot of the day-to-day operations, I think that is going to continue until we have a new town administrator on board, but also I think getting that person well-oriented and helping them get off to a good start. I see that process as being quite an unusual situation for our town, because we've had, a town administrator here for 13 years. And I think that while I appreciate, Nathan's description of what the chair does, my own experience and from what I can see going forward, given that we have an interim town administrator, who is wonderful, but he doesn't know, right, the town that well. And so it needs a lot of support. And then similarly, when we have a new town administrator on board, I think the role of the chair will continue to be much more hands-on than it will be, hopefully, once we have a new town administrator on who really sees this as a place that they're gonna commit to for a period of time. And so I think that's the reason I would be very interested in continuing as chair, because I think I understand what the work is, I've done the work, and I can see, I have a pretty clear vision of that piece of the work, which is really internal, a lot of it's internal staff work. And the other thing is, I am not suggesting at all that we sort of break with, the general policy that we've had and consider this to be something we would do regularly. But I do think the circumstances suggest that that might be an appropriate thing to do for this next year. And David, I don't know if you're still on the call and want to offer. Perfect timing. I just did, because I just got off a plane and I just figured,
So,
be nicer, more careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, did you follow what we were, okay.
With eagerness. Okay, so first of all, having been on 3 major committees in my career here, and having been chair of the other 2 and multiple year chairs in both of them, I personally am exactly the opposite of Nathan. I think there's a steep learning curve to the chairmanship of a big committee, and that you kind of have to go through one full cycle to understand it, and then you're more effective. So I'm absolutely a proponent of actually a 2-year assignment. Now, I take Nathan's point about getting caught. And in 5-member committees, you have to take that seriously. But I don't think you have to codify it. I mean, for example, if either Kate or Nathan becomes chair, that doesn't serve mentoring of Travis any different than if you stay chair, right? Because he's the only guy we have to mentor. The rest of us are already prepared, right? So I don't see where that solution fixes the get the next guy ready problem, right? So, Travis could do clerk this year if he wants. There's no real thing to do as clerk and be vice chair and then be in a position to be chair. That's okay. That follows the thing. And depending on future year elections, you kind of, if you have a reasonably balanced 5-member committee, you ought to be able to manage your succession. It's important. I don't want to downgrade in any way the importance of prepping the next group of members to be leaders of that committee. But everybody's in a 3-year term. So everybody has 3 years to kind of, if everybody has 3 years, then it is incumbent on the leadership of the time to have a path forward for the new members. There are occasions where, because of timing and people quit, we had it at school committee where somebody quit and 2 people were rolling off, and we, 3 people were going to roll on, and Christine actually stepped in for a 1-year assignment, but that's pretty rare. And I don't think you need to make a rule about that. So I guess my feeling is pretty strong, actually. And I said it as soon as I got on this committee, that I thought 1 and done was not a good solution. That really, we ought to be grooming chairs to serve 2 years. And most people, including yourself now, opt for multiple terms. Right? Again, and I think Alan did a fine job as chair. But he was chair and then he rolled off. So whatever experience he gained, which was considerable in COVID, we lost anyway because he didn't re-up. So from my point of view, multiple year, not what were you on, like 17 years chair of planning board or something like that, or of a appeals board?
I was 6 years as
Yeah,
chair of the
you know,
zoning board of appeals, and so I do, but I think this conversation is helpful
Yeah,
for me
I
to
mean, just again,
understand
my
the.
personal view is a 2-year chairmanship, especially if there's something going on, is entirely appropriate. Thank you for letting me speak.
Well, we have a motion on the
Motion,
floor
sure.
and it's been seconded, but,
Yeah, but I made a motion and you didn't ask for a second, though.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what was your motion to
That it be-
nominate? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I guess, so technically, we have to deal with the first one before we deal with the second motion?
Well, no, because if you vote in the first, then he doesn't get a
Right.
second. So how does that work?
So maybe, I mean, let's make this a collegial, conversation.
Yeah.
Why
I
don't
think that
we,
would be-
address your proposal, if that makes sense to you? Why don't we go ahead and address that now?
How do you do that?
Um,
Make a
well,
motion or
No, well,
move to table the other one to discuss?
No, I think that I think what's happened in the past is, because we've had this before, is there's two motions, and if it's, one isn't seconded, it's not seconded, and it's not, but if it is considered, then you just vote on each one. And you have a discussion about you have a discussion about each one, and then you
before you vote.
vote on
either
each,
one.
then you vote on each one, and one,
Okay,
they obviously can't both pass.
Right. right, okay. So your motion, was to nominate Kate as the chair. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and did you want to do that as
You
a
did, you
slate?
did it as a slate,
Yeah,
so
So do you want to
Yeah.
make that?
I did it
motion
as
again?
Kate as chair and me as vice chair, because that's the role I would be moving into.
Yeah,
And also trying to address the whole TA role and everything, and Kate is here during the day. And so I think it makes sense for Kate. She also has the experience as a chair. And so that's why, I'm sorry, I didn't mention, just drop this on you, Kate.
I mean, it might have, I might not have made this other motion.
Um,
and then Travis would be clerk. right?
Well,
That's part of your
unless he,
proposal.
yeah, unless he doesn't want it. I don't want
But
to,
that's true for Kate
For-
too.
yeah.
Right? If she
Yes,
didn't want it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So,
I'd hear from Kate. Does she
Yeah.
want to do it?
I know, it's out of the blue.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little awkward. I mean, in certain respects, I felt like I didn't have enough time in my first year, and, this is gonna be, quite possibly my last year, and if I had another year, to work as chair, I might, be anxious to do it, but, as I said, I'm in somewhat of an awkward position, so I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say no if the other motion were to be voted down. So,
so I just want to ask, how do we deal with this?
Yeah.
I think fundamental, I'm not gonna say disagreement, but difference on the board about what I'm hearing is we should go 2-year terms, which I fundamentally disagree with. I think that, you're on the board for 3 years, and I think having the transition of the chair is a good thing for the town, and it's a good thing for the board, because it brings in new thought, it brings in, but we have to just remember that all the goal setting is done jointly, right? All the performing of the goals is done jointly. And so, but so if the first motion passes and we're saying we want to have, because what I was hearing Dave say was we want to start doing 2-year terms.
Yeah, but let me
What-
just interject there. I don't think that wasn't part of the motion.
Yeah, and I wasn't speaking for the
Got it.
committee, I was speaking for me.
Yeah, so that's a proposal. I think if we want to take that up in the future as a board, just as a as a change,
Mhm.
we should do that.
For
But
sure.
I think tonight, the motion is simply, not simply, but it's that that's motion that Kate made was to have the current group of officers continue for 1 more year. And that's the sum of it.
Right, okay, and
Okay.
it's nothing against your chairpersonship, I don't
No,
agree
I
with
hear you.
that, because in this, it's setting a precedence where the only other time I've seen this happen is when there were people who were not ready to be chair. And there's people in the room, I've been chair 2 or 3 times, you've been chair once, there are people in the room who could be chair again. So I just worry about the precedents, not your being
No, I
chairperson.
appreciate that.
I worry about the precedents that it's setting to
Mhm.
do that when we have other people who could.
Absent, I mean, I know I'm arguing both sides of the case, but absent having changed the policy, and you're not, I guess I'm just trying to restate, and you're not seeing enough compelling reason to not honor the policy.
Right.
Do not like too many negatives. Can you
Well,
flip the negatives and say that again?
Well, we do have a policy on our books to rotate, and it is actually for the select board. And that select board strongly suggests that all its committees as well follow their lead in changing. And we discussed this policy in a couple of years ago and decided not to change it. And I went in my preamble, I was saying, I thought maybe this was the fact that we were having so much flux in a staffing, that this might be a time to keep some stability in the board, in the board leadership as a counterbalance. And I think what I hear Nathan saying is he doesn't think that's a compelling enough reason to go against our own policy.
When we have other people and also, there's nothing that says that Barney can't be the person that's working with the town administrator to help get them on board, right? That's,
Right.
we as a board, the chair doesn't do everything, right? We as a board assign people to do things.
But it is the case that the chair and the town administrator work very closely together, much more so than,
Absolutely. Yep.
right, with other members, and so,
Yep, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think unless somebody wants to offer a new comment, that we should go ahead and take a vote on the first motion, which, is to approve a slate of, Barney Arnold as chair, David Modell as vice chair, and Nathan Brown as clerk. So we probably should do this as a vote, a roll call vote, rather than a voice vote. So, let's see, the way we typically do this, Travis, is, we do an alphabetical order by last name. So, so I end up going first, and I will say Arnold, I. And Brown.
No, we don't have Oscalillo anymore.
No,
Right.
right, right.
A Brown name.
What I?
Can I abstain?
No.
No. Cannot abstain. You made the motion.
I know I made the motion, but that was.
If you want to
before there was-
withdraw the motion, then
Can we pass me and I vote last?
Sure.
I don't think that's
know.
fair. No, wait a
I
minute.
would
That's not
prefer,
fair, Chuck.
it's not fair to me.
You
I,
If you're having
okay.
second thoughts
I'd
about your
stay with
motion,
your-
Right,
you should
Travis,
move
you're
to
right.
withdraw your
make a
motion.
decision.
Yeah, Kate,
Yeah.
I think that's not fair to Travis.
not.
Okay, well, I think I have to vote aye then because I made the motion.
You don't have to, if you don't like, if you,
You
if
changed your
If you
mind.
found Nathan's arguments compelling, I believe it's better if you just simply put a new motion on to withdraw your old motion, we'll vote that. And then we can reopen it. I don't think you should just feel like forced.
Yeah, I'm,
I mean, we'll express our opinions, but if you
Yeah.
change your mind, it's okay. It's better to do it now than later.
I totally agree. I do feel like I'm on the horns of a dilemma. And I think if,
My fault. I'm sorry.
well, it is, it's all your fault, Nathan. Well, and also, if the votes had been then flipped the other direction, and I would prefer, I think, see, what I'm trying to get is I would like to have consensus for
Right.
this vote. And,
Right.
so that's why I'm so bothered by
Right.
my vote.
I'll
Okay,
tell you what, then I'll
So-
vote.
Okay,
I say aye.
good. Then.
Then Kate, you're
I
voting
voted
aye?
Aye.
All right, so the motion carries.
Snell didn't vote yet.
Yes, you
No, I
did.
did, I
Yes,
said
you did.
aye.
Very
Yeah.
quiet.
Okay, well, given that that motion passed, then the second motion
Doesn't matter,
is
yep.
not up for consideration. Okay. Well, I hope we can move forward in a good spirit of, all working together, and, let's do that as we get into the next part of the agenda.
I would like to correct, I didn't have a good connection, but just for the record, you opened the meeting by saying it was May 25th. And you should say it's May 24th.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, so correct.
But I am gonna just run out and I'm feeling bashful now and get my mask. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. no,
Especially because we're gonna talk about COVID.
Okay, okay. Yeah, All right, so the next item is to discuss, the extension of COVID testing. So just as background, you know, as you all know, our fire department has been doing an incredible job of providing testing for, residents and others, who would like to get a COVID test. And we have been doing that, without charging and using federal funds to cover the cost of that, although the labor for that has been something that's been absorbed by has also been paid by federal funding. Okay, good. Thanks for the clarification. So Chief Soros is here with us and, oh yeah, we have an extra. Great. And turn that one on so you can be heard. Great. So, we have in our packets, some data from Chief Soros about the positivity rates and a lot of other numbers here. So, if you wanted to just give us an overview of what you see happening now, and then, and I know this is, who can know for sure, but what you think may, happen, going forward, and then the cost to, if the town were to pick this up, what the cost might be to the town, if we absorb the entire cost, or if we were to charge individuals that wanted to get a test for the cost of the test, and the labor would still be covered by the town, sort of how that would play out. That'd be great, Brian.
So, obviously, when we started, we didn't realize we'd be going quite this long. You always think, oh, well, the need for it, so the public health need has changed somewhat. Right now, a lot of it is, you want to put your kids back in preschool and they require a COVID test to get back in, or a PCR test. So places that require PCR tests. There's also, okay, so we're kind of done with that, but then prom happens, right? That was this week, right? And all of a sudden prom happens and then we get people come. This Friday morning, we were gonna go test the 6th grade because they need to go, they're gonna go to their, whatever it is, science camp or whatever the go away thing they do. And everybody needs to be tested, PCR test before they do that. So these things come up and we're like, oh, this is great. We can offer this service. Right now, what the government is picking up the cost of a test, which is about $45, and the labor, which is pretty small. So we don't staff it we've condensed, and everybody lines up at 4 o'clock and we whip them through by 4:30, and that's kind of what we're paying for. What the town is absorbing is my time and my EMS coordinator's time, or the town's EMS coordinator, so that, we don't charge extra for that. It's one of the things that's interesting about that is the federal government would pay for a minute no problem at all for overtime.
Huh.
Because we don't pay overtime. Oh my gosh, she writes essays, I write essays about why this is, whatever, to get it through. It's an interesting thing. And of course, the rate we're paying is, anyway, it's a great deal for the federal government if they could realize it. So that's kind of the cost range. So, so the money will be up at the end. They extended it to the end of June.
Right.
Once that is up, I think it would be a little bit hard for the town to pick up the cost of the test.
That's, I'm sorry, Brian, is 14 a test?
Or 45.
45.
So we can easily be $4,500 a week.
Yeah,
Which we can't
Um,
support.
and I think people can afford.
Yeah, so the other kinds of things that we can really help with and makes it feel really good that we do is there are instances where, like against the 6th grade, but also small children. Nobody else does a reasonable job with small children. And so they bring them there and, the kids, it's almost enjoyable to them. Anyway, it's a different experience than it is for pediatricians, which has been traumatic for some of these kids.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be able to do it. I think we probably should have the ability to do it, whether we charge or whatever. Also, a dispatcher, a police officer, whatever, let's get them tested and all, because we don't, and even within ourselves, which, departments can pick up, because we don't want to be sending people that think they might have COVID, and doing EMS work or whatever. So I think you know, is it becoming more like the flu? Yes, but having this ability, as long as it exists, we probably should have some ability to do it. But whether it's free for the public, I probably don't see the town doing that.
Well, we
From July.
do have ARPA funds. However, you know, the way we're using our ARPA funds are, we said, we decided to elect 100% of the ARPA funds to be used as, revenue replacement, and that can be spent on any governmental service, and this is clearly a governmental service, and on top of that, it also fits the criteria of ARPA funds. So I'm wondering if we don't charge for these, if the ARPA should be the one that takes up the $45, or, continue for the town to say, well, we'll provide the manpower, but if you want the test, you pay the 40, you know. But I don't know, that might cost you more aggravation for paperwork and what.
Right,
and this
so
and that
the
and the
thing
other.
that becomes aggravating, or with paperwork, and we started out a little bit that way, is if you're charging the government for some and not for others, that's where it gets really messy. Otherwise, we would have to figure out, because we don't have a revolving fund and all that, so we might have to set up something.
Right, how do you
Yeah.
pay for the
Well-
the cost while you're waiting for the ARPA funds?
Well,
You
no,
mean, or-
if
ARPA
we're
funds are
collecting
here.
$45 and that goes into the town's general fund.
Yeah,
And I'm having to pay bills that come in,
oh, how do you draw on that?
how do I
Right.
do that?
Yeah.
So what I was having them do initially was put it into our ambulance fund, because that's where the medical receipts go. And I'm not sure that's okay. So we'll have to just,
We'd have
if we
to
want to
sort
do
that
that,
out.
I'm sure there's a way to do it, and we'll have to sit down and
I think
figure it out.
in that case, it's, yeah.
And
I-
it may just be that it's, you know, general fund and then somebody signs off.
No,
that-
it would be an ARPA fund. So it would not be general fund.
Not if you're collecting $45, it isn't.
No,
saying
Oh,
if
I'm
you
sorry,
collect
if you're
$45,
collecting, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, sorry,
If you
sorry.
collect
Yes,
$45, we'll just have to set up
Right.
some way to
Right.
make that
And
work.
if ARPA
We don't
fund
have that.
determines they have enough money, just be cleaner is what you're saying, just.
Oh, sure.
Okay, still
Just
free,
like we're doing now.
different pocket, but it's
Right.
still.
And then the only thing that becomes an issue is, right now with the federal government doing it, we do not make much effort to police, whether
Yeah.
you live in town or not. We kind of look at
Right.
you funny if you don't, but really, we shouldn't be policing that, because it's federal money that's paying for it. We would want to be a little more careful about that.
Yeah, yeah.
If the town were covering it, yeah. Any questions from
When
others?
did you say that we thought the federal government was gonna stop funding
End
it?
of our fiscal year was
End of
easy way to
June.
say it, end of June.
Okay.
So it was supposed to stop earlier, and
Yeah.
that's why we had this conversation. I said, well, you know, the president last night said something about, and sure enough, they extended it through to.
So I know that, Board of Health is receiving something like 10,000, instant tests, and they're planning on giving them out at, Old Home Day, and, you know, they were saying that they didn't see much need for PCR tests anymore because of where we
Huh.
are in the,
Because the antigen test got better or because?
no, they just don't think it's,
Yeah,
you know.
So, I mean, there is, in terms of public health, you know, we're not sending people to the hospitals all the time anymore and
So it's
whatever.
not as significant if you're positive, is what you're saying.
Yes,
that-
and, yeah,
But it's still it's still the gold standard. And anyway, I mean, I don't want the science lesson here, but, you know, if you have it, the antigen test is fine, right? But if you don't, if you want to be sure you don't have it, the antigen test is not fine, right? So when the kids are going to outdoor ed or prom or whatever, you need the negative, the sensitivity to be at
Right.
PCR level, so I don't agree with that, what they say. But
Okay.
let me ask a question, Brian. This chart that's in our packet makes no sense to me at all, but
Well-
can you just tell me, like, roughly how many tests per week you're getting nowadays?
per week.
Yeah, or per month or whatever.
So
metric.
per day, we're doing anywhere from 5 to 20.
Okay, and so, and it's every day or it's, all right, so it's
5
between,
days a week. I mean, 6 days a week.
okay, so it's between 30 and 100 and something. Okay, so. like you said,
So-
it's a lot, it could be
It's not uncommon for us to do 100 a week.
100 a week.
We've done.
Okay, so 100 a week, 4,500 a week is times 50 4,500, wow.
Yeah.
For
it's
a
up.
thousand, for, that's $250,000, right? 200-something thousand dollars. That's a lot of.
That's a lot of ARPA money.
Yeah.
But you'd have to think of it for probably a year, right? Is ARPA, what would be the mechanism by which your committee would evaluate whether that was?
So
something-
what I kind of, the last time we did this, I was saying that, you know, some of these places that are requiring PCR tests will probably start requiring antigen tests. And that has happened some, but not nearly as much as you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
So the hope would be that over the next few months, people start saying, you can come back to school if, you know, or whatever these things are. You know, who knows when that's gonna be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my husband's currently in Scotland, and in order to come back, he has to have, you know, a test to come back.
PCR test.
And he had to make an appointment, where he's in St. Andrews, to get a, what is it called? Supervised antigen test. So you can do it, you know.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna, you,
St. Andrews is pretty nice this time of year. He may decide it's not worth the hassle.
So am I reading this right, that like for the last 4 weeks, or in particular, those,
We've had 50%
we've had
positivity from.
highest positivity rate that we've had
Yeah.
since last August. Seems to me like it's not time to let our guard down. I think we should continue it until you come back and you say, hey, we're low again. And I mean, on positivity rate.
Yeah. So are there any other agencies that can fund this? I think that, or any consortia that you could join, that, you know, might be doing this in other towns?
So the person to talk to about that would be, it would be, Board of Health.
Yeah.
And they do have access to some of these things, and part of that is they've, you know, they're not sure if that's where you want to put your efforts. But if we, you know, we have the money, we're happy to continue to do it. If we, you know, every time we think, you know, why are we doing this? There's another compelling reason. that
Yeah.
Shows up at the door.
The reason I'm asking is because one of the tenets for the ARPA committee is don't use ARPA money if you can find other money instead, you know, so if there's state money or, you know, whatever, use that first, if possible, because that ARPA money is kind of precious.
So my thought would be, let's do a little more on the numbers and look at if we were to say we wanted to continue for 6 months, right, through December. We're gonna use ARPA funds. And again, you have to make some assumptions, obviously, about how much testing. But what's the ballpark cost of that? At the same time, check in with the Board of Health and understand why they're not, what is their current official policy about PCR testing and the need for it. And then and we should at the same time look at what, if we were to charge people the $45 for the test, what would that mean? Let's see what those options are, and unless there's some reason that we need to decide tonight, I would suggest we pull those together, and then at the June 14th Select Board meeting, we make a decision.
Can I make
Sure.
3 comments on your 3 points? So I agree with that approach. I think we don't need to decide tonight, but, so on the first point, the actual numbers, I guess you could refine it, but I think we have a pretty good sense. 100 a week is probably a good working number, and half a year is gonna be 120 grand or 100 and something grand. So that's a piece of information for you to think about in.
Right.
So that's point 1. Point 2, and I, at least for now, I'm liaising with the Board of Health, so I'll certainly ask them that question. But I don't think it's their call, like.
No, but I'd like their input.
If, you know, the airline says you need a PCR test, you need a PCR test. It doesn't matter what the Board of Health thinks. So I think the driver's not our Board of Health, but their input. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last point was, you said was,
Well, the
about the
options
funding.
of
So,
if we
right.
were,
So
who was paying
if
for the
we were to
test?
decide, for example, that you should pay $20 or $25, right? You know, a small number, but reasonable number. But it's 100% of the people, not the partial that we were talking about earlier. Would that make the revolving fund math easier, the mechanics of it easier?
No, not necessarily. The other thing that may make it harder is well, ARPA, we can kind of control.
Yeah.
But if you're going to the federal government and saying you want to be refunded, it's hard to.
But
be
they're not
part
going
of
to
it.
refund you.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
So
ARPA,
if it was
it's ARPA.
ARPA, that,
He has got to come to ARPA now, because
right, okay, so it may be, you know, in that last instance that you say it's $20, I'm just picking a number, right? It's a $20 charge, you have to be a resident. And, you know, that'll sort out some people, and, it goes into 53 year and a half or whatever it is, and you fund now 50K, you know, maybe that's an idea that you.
It-
So, yeah, what-
The other thing going in, initially, we were saving people's lives, I think, by doing it.
Yeah.
yeah,
So encouraging people to come so that they knew they were at COVID, and get them out of the stream and all that, stop the
Right.
spread was really important. At this point, if we want to charge people and somebody, it's a great convenience, and I think people are willing to spend something for that.
so our next ARPA meeting is the 31st at 11. So
Give
if,
you
if.
13 hours to decide.
No, it's the 31st. That gives you a week. I'm just saying, if you could, write up a little thing and send it to Scott. And at least we could talk about it briefly then and get you up and moving so that by the 31st, you maybe are done.
So I had sent
Me.
one to them before, and I can revise that and send it.
Yeah, it obviously would be revised, right? 'Cause-
I think we just keep it simple, though. I mean, I don't know, like, do you have the means of collecting the funds? And I think,
I think the problem with collecting funds is people will say, well, why don't you charge my insurance? And that's not something. we want.
No,
Right.
absolutely.
Sit down.
right, so I mean, I don't think we have to go for, do it for 6 months thing. I think we could say, Brian, do it for another month and let us know where it goes on. Do it for another month and let us know how it's going. So hopefully it's gonna be dropping off. I think
So are
we're
you saying do it charging or not charging?
not charging and using ARPA funds.
Oh, yeah,
on-
okay.
On a month-to-month basis,
Got it.
not saying we're gonna do it for the next 6 months. And just
Yeah.
leave it to your judgment, working with Board of Health, and when you should come back in and say, hey, our numbers are back to where they were last August.
Yeah,
Which is surprising, but I guess it's, we've got all these graduations and everything going on, and masks are off, we have to expect it to go up.
okay, can I ask you this? Do we want to set some sort of a budget? So when I go to our committee, I say, and the selectmen are in favor of this, and they, are setting some sort of a budget of, not to exceed, or, because it's
My
this
thought would be
board's.
what Brian estimates, because he's been living this for.
Okay, so, and the estimate is,
So it's 2,500 to 4,500 a week right now, and I'd have to sharpen the pencil to be more exact than that.
okay. Because this is the board that decides, not ARPA.
Right,
So
it'll
that's why,
come back
I
to us.
mean, it's
the
kind of
ARPA
one of these,
proposal, Right,
I
So
can,
you need a
but it would
number
be
now.
helpful to ARPA to know that
Something in that range.
25 to 45.
So if
Right.
you say 3,500 times 50 weeks, right? That's 175.
And we're saying 3
But
months.
we're saying going
1
by-
month.
6 months after, I mean,
1 month.
or 1 month,
Oh, 1 month.
I don't know if 1 month is, I mean, I assume you could,
I think we should
Make the-
do more than 1 month,
you don't wanna
So
go to.
we don't wanna have to-
a month.
but,
We're just going to Kate.
yeah,
Well,
but on the
let's-
other hand, it would be good for ARPA to know a sort of an upper limit so
Right.
that they know what's left
Right.
over to, because we don't want to
That would
dispense
be
more
sort
than
of the
Yeah.
annual update. You're thinking in terms-
175
I think you
Ks.
have to assume, I don't disagree with Nathan that month by month is not it's not a bad way to do it. But when you're thinking strategically about ARPA. you
Yeah,
should
that's what
think
I'm,
of 12 months.
Yeah,
Just
so,
think
but
about
you would
12.
know what a month is, and you would be saying this may go until Brian tells us it's not going, or until the board said stop.
But I wouldn't dismiss the $20 surcharge, just.
yeah, I
some
would.
kind of
Notional
charge, some kind of
Yeah,
charge, yeah.
People are paying for convenience, we do.
And
Why
it
not
isn't,
go here,
it-
it takes 5
and
minutes.
it isn't the life-threatening situation that it was when we first.
And it's below what, it's sort of at the nuisance level that people shouldn't be complaining that go through my insurance. It's a $20 service charge. You don't even have to get out of your car. And you get the email in a day, right? I mean, what could be
Yeah.
better? So I think,
So I'll talk to Kelly about.
Yeah,
what we-
financially, how that would play out. Who here on the board would like to be, take the lead in sort of having something to come back to the meeting on the 14th with some options?
I'm okay with Kate, she's an ARPA lady.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to once again throw something at you, Kate, but I think
Well,
it makes
I'm the
sense
ARPA
to you.
lady, you're
I
right.
think it makes sense
Yeah.
for you.
Everybody
Yeah.
else does?
Yeah. So, but it would be helpful if you can get something to Scott so that I can, and,
I'll talk to Board of Health, I'll give you.
and you'll talk to Board of Health. I already actually talked to them
Well,
today,
maybe
but,
I'll have-
and they didn't seem overly enthusiastic.
Well, I think it
I-
would be
I-
helpful to
but
get
it-
something in writing from the
Yes,
board.
Right, exactly,
Yeah,
absolutely,
And I spoke to Linda similarly.
yeah,
okay.
so.
All right, so we're good with that. Any closing questions or comments on this topic?
I want to thank you. We've done it before. It's been a great service. I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly been help personally and,
Yeah, and
certainly
it's
for
not
the
just
town.
to stop the spread. I think for a lot of people, it's you know, eases their mind to know I can go see my mother this weekend or
Right.
whatever it is, so.
I think
Right.
it's also very calming to be able to just come to a place in Carlisle and get it done. They're always very nice. They don't poke your brain. And you get the result. I mean, I think there's
Yeah.
so much good about what you guys are doing.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
terrific. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thanks, Mike.
you.
All right, next on our agenda, we are going to talk with Ken Mostello, the Chair of the Board of Assessors. And Brian is also here, our town assessor, our town chief assessor. So, yeah, so, well, or if you want to
One
sit
or the other.
together,
More
we,
comfortable.
yeah,
Microphone,
you can both, yeah, sit up here in front of the microphone. Just bring up one more chair. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, and I know in our packet, everyone, we have the proposed job description, and we'll have, and just give us a brief overview of that. Yeah,
Happy to do that.
thank you.
Yes, so, we have over the last year or so, made a, strong case for the need to, upgrade the, number 2 position in the assessors department, which in the past has been an administrative assistant position. And we are now looking to make that an assistant assessor position. So one of the things it is funded, it's in the town budget, it's been discussed, certainly with town administration, so it's pretty well known that we were looking to do this. We are currently advertising for the position. The only step really left for us to do to, clear the path to make this hire, other than find the person, is to get the pay grade change, something that's commensurate with a professional level position, not an administrative position. So that grade is currently a 5. We're looking to make it a 7. A 7 puts us in alignment with the pay that's been budgeted, with the FinCom and by town meeting. And that really clears the path for us to go ahead and make this hire. So just, for anyone here who wants to know the background on this, maybe for Travis's benefit, we're doing this for 4 or 5 reasons. First of all, we are looking to really reduce our outsourced field assessment, which historically we've done with Patriot Properties. There's money to be saved there. It helps to pay for this resource, but also because we're not terribly pleased with the job that they've done on some of this. We'll use them if the need arises where we have an urgent need, but really we're looking to do as much of that in-house as possible. It also goes over better with the taxpayers. Taxpayers like to have people that actually work for the town that they get to know and faces that they recognize rather than some outside contractor. But there are also some more compelling reasons. We have a backlog of new growth that we need to be out assessing, and we're behind. We are also behind on our cyclical compliance assessments, which are done on a 10-year rotation. The DOR has raised the issue with Brian. And a lot of this dates back to you know, a fairly prolonged illness that we had, obviously, with Brian's predecessor in the department. But the DOR has kind of given us some added time to rectify that situation, knowing that we are in the process of replacing, hiring an assistant assessor, and we'll have the resources to do so. So that's kind of important for us to be able to carry out the job and remain in compliance with the Bureau of Local Services, which is very important. And I think one of the things here is it's our expectation that this is going to be largely self-funded, because we're gonna find additional new growth that frankly has been overlooked, and that'll help everybody. So we're already seeing it. And I think the last point I would make on, again, why we need to do this, it's risk mitigation. We came seriously close last year to missing our certification with Melissa's untimely passing. We had no backup. Fortunately, we got a lot of support from the other folks in town here that work. The Bureau of Local Services was a big help, but we can't count on that. And I need to have the assurance that we've got some backup to Brian if he ever became indisposed for any reason, or we need to have an in-house resource that could potentially pick that up. So those are the reasons. Now, I will say, normally, the protocol would be that we would go to the Personnel Board with this requested change. The Personnel Board, for all intents and purposes, is inactive. I think we all know that. So that's the reason why we're here tonight.
Can I ask you a few questions? So, what is the grade of the assessor position?
Brian, I had asked you at one point, I don't know if we, yes.
What is your grade?
You'll have to excuse me, I was hired here and something, I haven't had enough time to focus on what.
Okay. All right.
It's higher than what we're looking for, that I'm sure, because I believe Melissa was up at around a 10 or 11.
Okay. And I understand it's budgeted, but what is the impact on the budget from last year, this year, for this being a 7?
There's gonna be about we got I think a $25,000 increase
Okay,
in our budget, specifically with the idea that we were gonna make this higher.
and this is not an administrator, obviously in the title and in the job description, it isn't, but this is not an administrative position. This is an assistant assessor who will be going out and doing kind of sort of the same things as you, but only at a more junior level. And if you were ever to leave, this could be a succession plan type of thing.
That's exactly what happened.
Hmm.
Because of the type of market, bring people with these types of skills.
The woman who I trained that came in with no experience to my department 7 years ago in Stoneham, where I previously worked, was offered and took the position. You know, if they were, oh, sure, excuse me. Someone with the right initiative and the willingness to learn, it takes time, but I was, you know, you can train somebody to cover the functions that would have been necessary in order to have the town get an approved tax rate last November, when Melissa did pass away and the previous administrative assistant wasn't incapable of doing so. I came from a two-person office, where I was previously. Through time and patience, I was able to, you know, to teach her all of the steps of the classification process and valuation. And then she has been hired as the director of assessing in Stoneham, where I came from. So I absolutely think that's capable.
And, but it's sounding like you're thinking that at this new grade, we'd actually be able to hire somebody who did have some skills already.
Well, I would say difference between 7 years ago when I hired the woman that was working for me in Stoneham, it's a very tight labor market with regards to people with these skills. COVID really affected this profession. There was a lot of older people. And what happens here is there's basically musical chairs. Those are people retire, assistants, move up to vacant, head positions. People in head positions shuffle around, but there has to be, there has to be a fulfillment of the lower end positions such as this. And that's what I'm seeing now. There have been about 7 different positions posted for looking for this type of, these types of skills, and there's a lack of them out there.
Okay, so what I'm
So,
hearing
we
is the
have
same
had
thing as in tech, there's
responses.
nobody to hire.
yes.
Well, we have had people respond to the ads. We have not started interviewing.
Uh-huh.
I won't say, I think Brian and I would agree that none of them are exactly ideal candidates, but they are definitely candidates we want to talk to.
Yeah, there's nobody that's walking in with the, with every, type of experience you're looking for. There's very different experience that can be applied to this position. I think the interview process is gonna be incredibly important to determining, motivation and personality and what they're willing to do and what they're, their willingness to learn is really one of the more important characteristics. And I think that's where the interview is gonna be key in determining that with those who apply.
I really worry about what this is gonna do with other departments, but I think we dodged a bullet last year, and I think we should do this. My
Thank you.
opinion.
I do think, as I stated, I do think that within 2 or 3 years with the right candidate, you could be looking to see, I'm not sure who gave the classification hearings, previously, but I would like that person to be involved in that process, after they've had a chance to go through the full year cycle and have them participate, so they're getting that experience and understanding, so that if you do run into that emergency situation that Carlisle found itself in last year, that this person would be capable of at least getting you through that process. And then, seeking the help or outside resources, looking towards the next fiscal year. But that's really like the last hurdle, where you have some time and the last deadline, so to speak. You have time when abatement season starts after the actual tax bills are issued. You have time before either myself or that position would be out in the field doing inspections. It's really that end of the beginning of September and the end of November window, which is really important. You have to get values approved, the tax rate set, and the tax bills out. It's really a tight window, and
It is. And I will just add to that, one of the things I'm really looking to do is free up some of Brian's time in that period, so we actually can get some meaningful management data on assessment revisions, on interim adjustments, which has been sorely lacking in the past. It's been one of these things in the past where we get handed, interim assessment adjustments, and it's like, well, I need your approval on this today, board. It's like, okay, how did we come up with these numbers? Well, Patriot did this, they didn't really tell us. Okay, and meanwhile, we have to defend this to the taxpayers.
Right.
So we're looking to change that mode of operation. I'm looking for something that's a little more substantive that we can actually defend if we're asked about it.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing, which I think makes a lot of sense, is that, you want a department where you have a number 2 that could step in over time, right?
Mhm.
But can also, right, make it possible for the
and while
chief.
at the same time, you see potential for increased, revenue generation as well
Right.
as cost savings.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But eliminating that risk, that we ran into last year is a big part of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I lost a board member this year. And she was spending probably most of her free time, here in town hall during the fall months, trying to keep things going.
Yeah,
And I think it eventually became a little too much for her. I can't promise that again.
right. All right, any other comments or questions?
Given the tight labor market and the shortage of qualified candidates, is there a possibility we have to upgrade the position more to attract somebody? Because you don't know till you try, right?
Exactly. I would assume that you need to at least go through the interview process to check that out.
We do have applicants, Dave.
I
That
know
would
what
be
you're
certain,
saying.
yeah.
Okay, so let's try it.
And we do have a note in the packet from Steve Ledoux, who's recommending the grade position at grade 7. So there is a motion in our packet. Would, one of you like to move the motion? It's on page 7.
I'm,
in the packet.
Ethan's got it.
I move to approve the recommendation of the interim town administrator, Steve Ledoux, in his role as acting personnel administrator to grade the assistant assessor position to grade level 7 to create more room for growth for the position.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All right, we can do this by voice vote, I believe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent.
All right,
So,
well, thank you. Appreciate your help. with
approved.
this.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you very much for what you're doing. It's, I can tell you're really gonna bring our, great improvements to our, assessors department.
Yeah, my house has already had its 10-year, re-eval.
Unfortunately, there aren't enough.
I'll go last.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, Ken. All right, well, let's move on then to, the discussion of the planning board, staff reorganization, and Madeline Blake's here, the chair, co-chair of the planning board. Thank you, Madeline.
Who's the other two?
Peter Yao. We're doing our elections on June 13th, so we're still on our prior year's officers.
And in your packet, you have, I believe we have something from you, don't we?
Yes.
About a job description. Yeah. Does some of you have that up? What page is that on? So I can.
Oh, see, I always do mine
fine.
separately, so it's just.
Okay.
I can't
All right,
tell you.
that's okay. I'll get there. And I know Madeline's gonna give us an overview.
You could download those
Page 13 of 68.
in both ways.
Yeah, here it is. Okay.
So I'm here on behalf of the planning board requesting to go ahead and fill the open position that we've had now vacant for almost a year. George Mansfield, our prior long-term planning administrator, retired on June 11th of last year. And we've been working with John, I think you all know this, John Mativier as the interim planning administrator. So what we're requesting to do is to fill this position with a planner rather than a planning administrator. So it's a different position. Some of the duties will be the same, but most of it we're anticipating would be functions that we're not covering now or that we've covered only sporadically. We're also recommending George was working 25 hours a week, so he was part-time, and we would like to fill this position with a full-time planner. I can go into what we anticipate they'll do. They will report to the planning board. This will be our employee, but we really envision that it's someone that would work with a lot of different groups in town. They would work on projects that we do jointly with other boards. I've thought about how are we gonna decide if there's a lot of people competing for their time, what they'll be assigned. And I think it would make sense to start with the select board and the planning board setting goals and each year seeing what flows from that and selecting projects. I would anticipate that or hope that this person would be generating and suggesting their own projects, that they'll do a much more robust participation in regional planning, mass planners, continuing ed so that they can keep up with trends. They'll come back to us and say, this is what other towns are doing. This is what's going on. In the planning board, we have quite a list of things that we haven't been able to get to, from going over the zoning bylaw, rewriting our fire rules, assessing whether our assumptions about rainfall and our regulations are appropriate for climate change. There's a number of projects in the master plan, which would certainly come into the mix. And a big focus of this, we want someone who is very technically literate. We've just managed to start initiating having GIS. We've purchased a perpetual license that Brian McDonald, who was just here with John Mativier, have started that, but we want someone with strong skills in that area and who will continue. We've started scanning and moving to all electronic documents, and we would also like to implement electronic permitting. So someone who's got the technology skills to continue that. And I think it's important. I think we would be well served by having a person that is a repository of knowledge about our town, particularly about our land use and development patterns, so that that information can be disseminated to people that are working on different initiatives or different plans. And we have that detailed information about what our history has been, why it's been like that, and what is and isn't possible for us. And GIS is certainly part of that, but I think it's broader. And I guess I should mention that I am not as organized as the assessing department because we are somewhat not as well lined up with the budget cycle. I think. We drafted this position description last fall. We purposely waited and held it because we wanted to receive input from both the master plan and the governance committee. So we're going forward now, but we missed the chance to get approval for the position when the budget meetings were going on last fall. Our budget was supplemented by $15,000, but I don't think that's gonna be enough. I think we're gonna have to find some more money. And I'm hopeful that that's possible and we don't have to wait a year.
So you have the funds that were used to pay George part-time and then an additional 15, but you've determined
Yeah.
that you're gonna have to offer a higher salary to attract.
What's the gap there, including
I
health
think
benefits?
What we have is, I don't know the answer on health benefits. I'd have to
Okay,
get
so
the
is that
information. for you.
40%?
George had that. So, what we have is 74,000 and something. And the range that Steve suggested for the position starts at 89. So it's another 15.
15, on
Okay.
top of the 15 that rolled in.
Yes.
So FinCom did roll in, like
Yeah.
FinCom basically allocated.
Added an extra
74.
15.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, I mean, I think you guys see this, but it is asking to spend this extra $30,000, but it's getting a lot of new functions.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
they're two different. things.
yeah.
It's only actually an extra 15,000, right?
Well, from what we were
Right,
paying
but-
George,
But
yeah.
from what we would be
So
asking,
you're saying FinCom already, to Nathan's point, FinCom tossed in the extra 15 already
They did, yeah,
in
so
their
we have
budget.
about a $15,000 short, if you
Yeah.
could get them at 89.
right.
Get them at 89.
And it probably, I doubt we're gonna be ready right on July 1st, so it'll be somewhat of a prorated year.
Uh-huh.
I really think it would be great if hopefully it wouldn't be too much of a delay, but if the new town administrator could come first and could participate in this hiring so that they can
Exactly
develop
what I was going to
a
say.
relationship,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
from the get-go with this
Because it
person.
should, I really am hoping for a real good leadership team that would be working together, that they would get along together. So rather than this, this one being hired over there, this one hired over here. So if you could at all wait and just one more month, till we get ours in and then you get yours. I think that would be ideal.
But you made a comment that the planner would report to the planning board.
Yes,
And does Gretchen also report to the planning board?
yes,
Okay, so we still have to nut out that issue, right? About reporting, quote unquote, to boards rather than getting direction and guidance from boards, but reporting to the TA and having them work. Because that is an impediment to what we're trying to accomplish in terms of a cohesive working team that's
Well,
somewhat flexible.
That's covered here under supervision received and given employees under the administrative direction of the town administrator and the policy direction of the planning board. So I think that's covered.
Mhm.
Well, then, right, so then I agree with that part, I'm just saying the co-chair here herself is saying, we'll report to, we have to begin to disassociate that mentality of the health agent reports to the health board and the planner report, because when they go inside town hall, we don't want to recreate those silos that have
Right,
been
we-
there. We have an opportunity
Right.
to undo that, so
Yeah,
I'm asking.
but
maybe
I-
more
I-
broadly.
I
just-
do believe it, because I didn't even read the whole thing. It consults with the town administrator and or the planning board where clarification, interpretation, or exception to municipal policy may be required. So I think that's really that idea is baked into this job description, that it's not solely to the planning board, but there is some answerability to the town administrator, and the town administrator in our personnel policies is the chief evaluator in conjunction with the chair of the various boards because very often the nighttime government is not in as good a position to evaluate some of the day-to-day work that the staff do. So I think we're trying to continue to build that and foster that idea. It's not a matter,
But then there should be something mentioned that in,
can I respond to
oh,
that?
yeah, sure.
I believe that legally, because we're the appointing authority, we are the supervisor. And because this person is going to carry out jobs, you know, some of their tasks are supporting our board. I don't think we have a lot of choice on that. And I have had over the past year occasion to think about what it's like to supervise a person in this situation.
Yeah.
And I have it clear in my head. And if you're the supervisor, if you're the appointing authority with the authority to hire and fire, I mean, that's where the buck stops. It just is.
Yeah, but you've been part of our process, maybe. I mean, I would want to talk to Mr. Harrington about what you just said, but, and I'm not debating it. I don't have any knowledge, and you're a lawyer and I'm not, but I'm married to one, and I'm the son of one.
Good.
My lawyer wife accuses me of being more of a lawyer because well, anyway. So the question, the dilemma that I wrestle with, and you were part of our process to try to make the land use board, is not to question that. And the health department would say the same thing, right? But inside the town hall, when there needs to be flexibility, cooperation, that, if that is in fact the legal underpinning, it lends itself to silo. It creates fertile ground to create silos. And we are living, and we have lived silo life, and it hasn't been that great. And it's been inefficient as a town. It's led to inefficiency, it's led to tension, it's led to having to hire little bits of pieces of people because they're only in this department. We can't hire one person that does like 6 things. You know, there's a lot of things that I think we need as a select board to address in this time that we're looking at things. So I certainly support the position. I absolutely support the position. And I support finding the money. I'm just saying, and we have a little bit of time because we have to get the TA in and stuff, is we should try to think really hard about how we frame that whole thing so that the guidance comes from the board, but the day-to-day tasking and the teaming is not like the board's responsibility.
I will say that the whole planning board is on board with this, that we envision this as an outward facing position. We're proud of the fact that partly the application work has just gone down, but we've
Yeah.
achieved efficiencies that created time.
Yeah.
And this role is gonna be something different that we haven't done, so we're envisioning it, that it would work with other groups. But if you had, the housing group wanted them to do a project and the sustainability wanted them at the same time, someone's gonna have to help them, especially
Right.
when the person's new, you know, set the priorities.
Yeah. But that's where I think the TA helps.
Yes.
See, and that's why I would like them to also be a team so that the planner knows he can go to the TA to get relief from these other turkeys who are asking him to do, it doesn't, and that, because when it happens, you might not be might not have a meeting scheduled or, whatever.
I would be
It's-
delighted if that could happen, I'll
You know,
tell you.
Right, because you should not be managing staff. I mean, that should not be a part of your job description, and that's what we're trying to, we're not trying to seize control of your agenda or any of that. We're just trying to help support the staff and to ensure that the functions, the town hall functions all get satisfied that have not been satisfied for quite a while now. So we're trying to balance that. Any
Sorry, other comments or questions?
I think that's a good point about balancing, and I've been on the zoning board of appeals for a long time, so I know that this position, this has been talked about, or at least, discussed informally for quite a while as to how to best serve the town with the planning type position, so it's not out of the blue. But I would ask about the cost again, what that differential is, what we think, because this hasn't been kind of put forward to the FinCom and isn't in the budget. And so, and I guess because I'm brand new at this, I just was curious, where does that additional money come from? Is that from a fund that we have, or how does that mechanically
We
work?
would say, okay, and then FinCom would find the money.
I will say that the planning board is gonna have a large turn back this year because we didn't pay the second salary, so maybe they could just take what we saved and.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just, I think, and we haven't adopted or accepted the master plan yet, but all these things are components of the master plan, not only how we're gonna de-silo the, town or aspects of it, but also the financial implications of everything we do. And so we're gonna have to balance those things. So that's why I'm asking and just wanted to understand that process.
Mhm.
I have to say, this was something that was started more or less independently of the master plan because David and I, what was it, 2 years ago now? And Madeline And the chair of the Conscom and the chair of the Board of Health, we had what we called small meetings every Friday for almost a year, and talking about how to better, have better organization and supervision of the building departments and how they could work more closely together and maybe have, since there are functions that go across the different silos, take instead of having an assistant in each silo, have somebody, do more cross training and things like that. So this is all of a piece of hopefully reorganizing some of this.
I want to refer back to the note from Steve Ledoux that, makes clear that it, looks like this would be a grade 9, which is where the planning administrator position is currently classified. So the salary would be 89,767 to 95,484. And the planning administrator position would be eliminated, the one that George Mansfield held up through last summer.
But it sounds like, is grade 9 going to be enough? I mean, because this is a different, because this is not an administrator
Right.
position, which was ticking off the boxes. This is a
Right.
little more,
So
Um,
before we ask that, there's a question I had, Madeline. So did you guys outsource the quote unquote planning function then, George? or
John
did-
it just didn't
Tivia.
happen.
Well, in the interim, but I mean, when George was here and he's not a
Did we do
planner.
planning?
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
we just didn't
that
do
much
planning.
What?
We just didn't do, I wasn't here. I don't think we did that much planning. But when David Friedman was the chair, he could do it himself, and he and George did carry out a number of projects.
So they acted as a de facto.
Yeah, well,
plan-
but it would
We
be
don't
more-
have like an outsourced service that we were using
No,
in that era. We just didn't have quite the total skill level that you're asking.
We had David Friedman.
Yeah, right.
He was moving out of town.
I was
I
just
think he's
looking at
actually already
something in the
moved.
mosquito, and I
Where
came
did he
across
move?
this report that they
Concord.
did, that they cataloged all the roads in town, which ones are private, and George and David did that, and
Yeah.
I asked
Yeah.
Gretchen, and I'd never seen it, and it's this great report. I wish we had given it
Yeah.
to the master plan.
I was there when they did that.
You were, yeah.
Yeah, so I support this. Well, I think that it's important that, we've been lucky to have really, really good staff, and I think it's important as we have turnover that we're filling the roles with as good a staff or better staff. And, I think that, we as the volunteers on the board are managing some of the departments, and that was the big eye opener for me was, when I was on a board, I said, wait, I manage people. But I think that, we shouldn't be managing and micromanaging the details of what we're doing. We're just there helping, like, remove barriers and everything. And so we need to make sure that we're hiring people that can really do this. The only thing I would ask is, a little bit to what Travis was just asking, it would be great, since we just went through the budget process, of just letting FinCom know and getting their feedback a little bit, because we just went through the process. I'd hate to just say we're gonna approve another position, without giving them the heads up.
Well, one of my questions was gonna be what my next steps are, because I
Mhm.
haven't done this, so I had anticipated that if you guys were on board with this, then I would ask to meet with them, and I have been working with Lynn and keeping her updated
Yeah.
on what I'm doing, and, even over the last year, so
Mhm.
that they know it's coming, they don't know that we're gonna need $15,000 more dollars.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you'll be able to go there and say, hey, the select board approves this. Um, can you find the money?
Yeah.
And get their feedback. So we're not just doing it, because sometimes we really do just say, okay, and then they have to go find the money. And
So this is
it's not
acknowledging the
right way to
FinCom.
do it.
Yeah.
And so just, I think asking them.
Yeah. I don't think this is gonna come as any surprise to FinCom. I think
No, I
they-
know it won't.
They
Yeah.
have seen it coming. for a
I'd seen
while.
it coming too, and that's why I think, but I think it's good that we,
Yeah.
because then any board can come before us and say, oh, well, we need this, and I just think we need to have a kind of a process or a thoughtful way of going about this, so that not everyone's, knocking at the door. We can help
Right.
it.
I
Unless
would
there's a
say
real
this has been quite a process, and it wasn't the planning board coming to us and say, we need this. This was us talking to them and asking them, what do how can we do this better? And they did wonderful work and did do a very thoughtful job, I think, of
But I
coming
do
with
wanna
this
know,
plan.
it was super helpful to have the master plan input too.
Well, that-
because we didn't take everything verbatim, but it was the hugely influential on
Yeah.
having that being viewed as a need.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it
it was
was
great that you
absolutely.
did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
that you- So do you, so do we have a motion in here to, do we
No,
wanna
just as
say some-
discussion.
yeah, so,
I think
Well,
it's
I'd
just
be,
the sense of the board is what.
yeah,
matters.
so
Yeah.
the sense of the board is that we support the position and that we would like you to meet with the finance committee and go through the same discussion and explain where what you think the, financial impact will be and the need to get their input on how you might address the difference.
And then I
Um,
come back for a final approval to you, so I would come back again.
Yeah, or just give it to whoever the TA is then as a, hey, can you
Yeah.
approve this? And you don't
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
pay.
but I would also ask that you do involve the TA integrally in your search and, you know, interview process and all that. Because those are people, they're gonna have to work closely together and lead together. 'Cause-
Well, I was hoping that they'll come in time that we could do a similar to the screening committee that you guys set up for the town administrator. We could have a more smaller modified version that would be the town administrator. And I guess I shouldn't call anyone out, but I do have a planning board member with planning experience. And an interim planning administrator that is a good idea.
Yeah, Yeah.
If they're willing, but to have a small committee like that,
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
including the
Okay.
TA.
Yeah,
which would be
that would be
good.
great.
And hopefully the timing will work out with the TA position.
Expect them to come in,
Well, we're gonna talk later on the agenda about that we're gonna do the, interviews of the 3 finalists that the board hasn't heard about yet, but, June 24th, I think the date is, so it's not for a while, and then we'll make a selection, we hope, but then there'll be that process of working out a contract, but also them, if they are in a current position, giving notice and, right, so it could take a little longer, but I think if you wanted to move, if it didn't, you know, maybe some of the preliminary steps you
couldn't
could
still
do
be-
with Steve Ledoux as the interim,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I would really like to, it may be optimistic, but to get someone around September 1st, because John is gonna stop working with us June 30th.
uh-huh,
So that's already a 2-month gap,
yeah, yeah,
but it
All
sounds like
right.
it would be doable.
yeah, good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thanks,
coming.
Madeline.
We don't do a master planning thing today,
Yeah.
No, we're just accepting the
we just-
master plan, yeah.
so we don't need
So,
to have it.
I mean, Madeline can stay if
Yeah.
she'd like to, because it's very
I'll make
exciting,
that
but,
motion right now if you want.
yeah.
I move that the select board vote to accept the 2022 Carlisle Master Plan as presented by the planning board on May 24th, 2022.
Second,
For a second from David Modell.
And the
Thank you.
presentation is the link in here, right?
Yes,
Okay.
That's the
and it's
final,
online, you know, it's on the Carlisle,
Yeah.
.gov,
Yeah.
thing, and it's,
and this is the,
and I'm so glad we're
plan-
not on that committee anymore.
you're gonna
Christina's
jump on the
here. One of
implementation.
the hardworking members of the master
Yes.
plan steering committee. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, so if, unless, I will say that the discussion about implementation and responsibilities, I mean, all of that's gonna come at a future select board meeting where we are gonna involve the planning board and kind of do some of that jointly. So if there's no discussion about accepting the plan, I'd like to go ahead and take a roll call vote. You good to do that?
Roll
I
call.
mean, sorry, a voice vote. So all those in favor of accepting the 2022 Carlisle Master Plan as presented by the Planning Board on May 24th, 2022, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Time is it?
All
8:30.
right, so let me tell you about what's going on with Timbernook. There's lots of late breaking news here. And, in the packet, let me just get to that section. You'll see some
There was nothing
back
in
and, yeah, there were some memos
Oh,
from
yeah.
Tony and the Board of Health about Timbernook, et cetera. I'm not gonna try to go back and go through all the
go
details of the last 4 weeks. You know, I thought tonight we might be actually, taking a vote on a proposal about the camp that they have planned to continue on the Conant land. However, this afternoon, I had a conversation with Sherry Kennan, who's the director of the Timbernook program. And she told me that just this afternoon, they had signed a contract with the town of Sudbury for a site there that they are going to move ahead on having the camp there this summer. Yes.
So,
So so the question about whether or not that camp might happen here in Carlisle this summer is a moot conversation now. And they will finish their current preschool, after-school program activities that are scheduled to run, I think, 2 weeks, or maybe the end of next week is when they're over.
June
A-
2nd.
And then we being, I'm gonna propose that the town administrator be the point person for making sure that their cleanup and not just they remove all of their equipment, but also that there's an effort made to really, as much as possible, return the area to a, a more natural state. That will happen the week following, so that by mid-June, we can pin down the dates more precisely, but everything should be out of there and it should be back to as natural a state as they can make it, with follow-up with oversight by the town to make sure that happens. So that is the conclusion.
Gone
of a
in 2
fairly
weeks.
long, series of discussions and difficulties, but I think it's a good resolution. It means that the families that had signed up, their children to have a summer camp experience through this program, they will be able to do that. It'll just be at a different location. That does include some Carlisle families, not a large number, but, and it also means they have a permanent site going forward. And it means our town, we've done our bit to support their program, and we will, we've learned a lot about, how we might, if we were approached to do something like this in the future, a better way to do it. So comments or questions?
No, I think that's a great outcome, but I've been in business long enough to know that sometimes these things don't always work out. And so hopefully the town will accept that, the other town that they're dealing with, and, it moves forward. And if not, I guess will come back to us again.
Well, but we will be prepared next time. We're really smart. We do make mistakes, but we try not to make them more than once.
Same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Right.
Make different mistakes.
We make different
No, but
mistakes.
Barney, if, for example, like if you're renting, right, and then your lease is up, there's usually a walkthrough and there's some kind of sign
Right,
off.
final,
Everything is
right,
room clean or whatever,
right.
right? And there's usually a deposit or something,
Right.
some
Yeah,
financial
right.
lever to say, if we
You've got to do
disagree,
this.
we're gonna
Right,
withhold that, right?
Right,
So we don't really have that here. So I guess my question, I mean, we should be, and we have people here who like to walk in those woods. I don't know how much of a leverage we have other than good faith. And at the end of the day, if there's something that needs to be remediated, can we just commit town staff, like DPW staff, or who would be ones to go in there and really?
If
make it
something
not-
need to
we
be
should have,
done,
impose
well,
the citizens.
yeah. At first, I would say that, having dealt with Sherry Kennan quite a bit over the last 6 weeks, that, she wants to leave the town
She doesn't want to burn her
in
bridges.
having a good relationship, right, between Timbernook and Carlisle. And, I have discussed with her in a different context, but when they were originally thinking we might move them to a different site, how this site would be left, and that we would have a site visit to review what they have or haven't done, be able to set up a list of things we wanted them to do, and that they would agree to do that. And she's open to that. She said, yes, we would be happy to do that. So if there are larger, things that need to be done that will require, heavier machinery or something, I don't know what that would be, but,
Probably heavy
that-
machinery, but
but-
she's just like,
Will
it's like
do.
two people.
well, no, she's got a staff, but nevertheless, yeah, if there's something that they can't do, not sure what it would be, we would have to figure out some town resources to put in that, but I don't think it's gonna be a lot. Fortunately, land does return, right? Now, once we get off it and let it recover, so that will be good. And John and Annette, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you saw my email earlier this afternoon. Okay, good. Good, and we thank you for
Yeah,
your
please.
stewardship of the land. Yeah. All right, good.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on, to the, following up our discussion about regionalization, which I know, Travis, you joined us for on Zoom last meeting, so that's good. You were here for that conversation.
Was here and present,
Yeah, that's right.
right here.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a brief conversation, but it seems to me it's important for us to figure out, okay, if you recall the conversation we had, which I thought was very, thoughtful and wide-ranging, one of the ideas that came up was, did we want to consider an outside, firm that might help us with some of that, I think it was you, Nathan, that described, sort of the analysis, looking at various municipal services so that we could understand what services that we currently provide or might like to provide, that we provide as a municipality in its own. What are other towns doing? What are the possibilities? And also what are the kind of cost benefits, if there are any, or more, and also the improvements to services that might come from some kind of sharing of resources. So there may be some other things that, others of you have thought about, but I think this conversation for tonight is to see if we are in agreement about a next step to sort of move forward in the conversation.
My preference on a next step, sorry, I'm always going first, but my preference on a next step would be to wait for our new town administrator who would help shepherd us through this, and also wait until after we have gone through the review of last year's goals and our goals for this year, just to understand where it's gonna fit within those goals, before tackling something, like saying, we're gonna kick this off now. I think without the full-time town administrator, I don't think we're gonna get very far. And without understanding where this sits on the priorities for our goals for next year and how we did last year, I think it would be hard to, I think this should be part of our goals discussion.
I think that's well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly think having a TA on board would be, good, and they may bring some other ideas and insights and relationships and everything else that, we could draw on. Like going to the Collins Center, for instance, and starting something
Right.
up, and we find the new guy, has something much better in his hip pocket, so.
Yeah. So how do you, think we should, or is there any, and maybe Nathan, you are sort of more up to date than I am about the Public Safety Facilities Task Force. With, when we discussed, as a board, when we discussed this at our last meeting, we were not, we didn't want to give any direction to that group to be doing any of this, but obviously some of what they're looking at would be affected if there was some effort at some kind of sharing of services or regionalization. And I don't know how far along they are in their process, but I wouldn't want to have them, go really far in one direction, and then we start a process about looking at regionalization and decide we want to pull back. Do you have any sense of,
I think from what we were talking about with them last time, I think, there were three areas that came up as regionalization. I think, there was totally regionalize the police department, and in all of our discussions about that, it was gonna be a precinct. We were still gonna need a building here, you need the proximity. There was totally regionalizing the fire department. I think that would be incredibly cost ineffective, but that's just my own editorial. But we would still need a fire department, a building here, and, I guess what might change there is maybe, but I don't know, maybe they would already consider when designing something that maybe there's people staying there because it's full-time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, and then the more likely one was dispatch, which is a very small room, and what we talked about was, well, build the building with a really small room and make it a conference room for now, and if we ever get out of regionalization, we would still be able to use it. So I'm not, I may be being naive, but I'm not sure that a lot of what they're thinking about now would change that much.
Right.
I don't know that it would change that much. I think it's who's managing it and who's staffing it would change.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that if we regionalize the fire department, there wouldn't be a fire station here somewhere towards the center of town. And the same thing with the police. I think even if we're regionalizing, I think that people, I just want to point out again, we failed to regionalize, I think it was the animal control officer. I think it's a steep hill, to regionalize things. But, I think that there's gonna be a desire to have it like be the same people that are serving the town and everything. So I think it's more administratively that it changed, not so much infrastructure, but I'm not a public safety building person. But I think that's where we landed.
Yeah, I agree. There's the administration, and then there's functions. There's the administration of the functions, and there's housing the functions. We can maybe regionalize the administration, but we can't regionalize the,
But certain
The house.
things, they themselves brought it up, right?
Right, it was
Yeah.
Jerry
And-
Lerman
and
and
so-
Christine, I think, that came.
I totally agree with Nathan's comment, like, we shouldn't jump ahead, like, we got a process, we get a TA, we do our planning, which we also should start talking about when we're gonna do that. So that's a summertime activity. I mean, this is gonna take a while. Both things are gonna take a while. So I think it's fine to wait. But on the comment about the infrastructure, there are in the range of possibilities, fix what you got, just fix up what you got, whatever that means. Build 2 new buildings or build 1 combined building, right? I mean, there's a pretty wide range of things infrastructurally, regardless of how the thing, to Nathan's point, what the organization is. But I would say the requirements of a precinct where the jail and the motor pool and a whole bunch of things are actually centrally located in another town, and all you really have are, officers on duty and some other things that you need to be right here for, is a different footprint, I think. So maybe that's why they were bringing it up. So I think the guidance is like, we hear you, we are interested in regionalization, and we're likely, I don't want to speak for our goal setting, but it's likely that will be a goal for us. And we want to engage the new TA and that expertise. And once we do that, if we do that, we will, yes, again, likely create some kind of committee, commission, task force, whatever. And maybe outside consultants, some group of people to take a serious evaluation. Bear that in mind as you are processing your.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't
Yeah.
give more guidance than that, right?
I think that's a key point, which is to have them,
They would be
looking at
hard.
options, and the options include some of the things that you're describing.
So I'm just thinking off the top of my head right here, which is always very, very dangerous, but one thing we could do is we're having a fall town meeting. We could ask town meeting, should we be looking into the regionalization of
That's a-
fire and police? And because otherwise we could spend a lot of money on consultants, I just think I could be wrong, I think it's a very steep hill to climb to regionalize those two.
Well, we wouldn't do, is there any really, I haven't heard an impetus to regionalize fire.
No, but I'm just bringing up what we had talked about last time.
Right.
Right.
Talked about evaluating all these different things for
Right.
regionalization, not just
Right, so I
fire.
think, I mean, I guess if you start with that question, you'll probably get a resounding no, and then you won't do anything. So you yourself proposed, and I agree with this completely, that one of the things is not even regionalization, is rationalization. Just be smarter about how you allocate town gown resources, for
Mhm.
example, right? So we should be doing that. And then separately, there might be some low-hanging fruits, like communications is possibly one, I don't know, but there may be some other things, or it's not even necessarily departments, but rather functions like payroll, I don't know, that a process with an expert could guide us in ways we could be more cost effective.
Right, and that's why I was focusing it just on the public safety, because that's where the pressure is right now,
Right.
right, is coming up with that. And we just built a whole communications tower system in town here.
You need that anyway,
Well-
right? Because you still can't reach people in various.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just set it on a
And
dispatch.
again,
Right.
that really is independent of the regionalization, because you need those
Yeah, so
towers
you gotta
regardless
reach
of
them, right.
who manages them.
Right.
And,
Just have to move the head.
yeah,
I think we can do this through, our process of goal setting and then come up, and I know you're trying to move this forward because you're responding to certain, situations on the
Right.
ground coming up, but I think there's probably gonna be enough time and then enough, if we focus our energy on that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
but I like to keep in mind Nathan's idea of possibly talking to town meeting and taking,
Getting a
the
sense,
sense.
yeah, right,
Um,
testing the water,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that would have to be very carefully crafted as to what
Yes.
the question actually was.
Right.
And I think we need a lot more information, before we ask it, especially, about, in fact, the police and fire department costs for the various,
Services,
not for
No.
the services, but for the
oh, a
options,
structure,
the structure options.
yeah.
Right,
And,
understanding that we need to understand how much those numbers may change if we were to regionalize.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Because wouldn't want to go in there and say, hey, it's $40 million, or do you want to regionalize? Because that's not
No,
fair.
no, yeah, right, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Right.
what I was trying to say.
And don't
exactly.
quote me on $40 million. That was just a number that came out.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and Mary Lynn is on the Zoom, so Mary Lynn, no quoting Nathan
Headline
Brown,
then.
yeah,
Yeah. This was
Yeah, it takes a life of its own,
like Biden when he.
right,
yeah. The
steers the-
staff jumps in, we're cleaning up this, yeah,
right, right.
okay.
All
I mean,
right,
that-
but
That's reasonable, but there's also, we could challenge that committee to say, look, one of the ways we recommend, one of the ways that you analyze this is to consider how the footprint might change if
right. if
those
we-
two functions,
Right,
either one or both of those functions
Yes.
was essentially a precinct of a central.
right,
What does go out? I
right,
mean,
and yes.
and
would
is it
they-
significant? It might be
right.
insignificant. I mean, I said the jail, what's that, one cell, right?
Yeah,
The motor pool is like a parking lot. So it may in fact, it may not take them that long to come up with the conclusion that the footprint of a precinct and the footprint of a standalone department
Right.
is like 2,000 square feet. It's like in the noise of the
Yeah.
construction.
so what I'm thinking is, and Nathan, since you're the liaison, I'm wondering if you'd be comfortable doing this, which is just have a follow-up conversation with Jerry.
Sure.
And Christine about just what our process is that we're discussing, and then
Right,
what
'Cause
we
I do
want them
think-
to
yeah.
consider, yeah,
and I do think, and this was my point last time about the dispatch, is
Mhm.
sometimes you regionalize and then you pull the regionalization back. So would we want to build a building that wouldn't allow us to pull it back and therefore we're stuck in it all times? Or would we want to build a building that gave us that flexibility?
right,
I think we want flexibility.
It's a fair point.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, that'd be great then, good. Thank you all, and thanks, Nathan. All right, well, so let's, move ahead to then looking at the fall town meeting. So, and if you had a chance to look through some of the responses, we heard back from Wayne and I heard back from Peggy. And what's in your packet is we had put out the idea after Wayne and Peggy's initial feedback Good night, all.
Good night, thank you.
That, either Monday, October 17th or Monday, October 24th. And then Peggy wrote back about her concern about, the, early voting for the, national election in November, as well as the primary potentially. And so I had a conversation with her yesterday, and she agreed that October 7th was doable for her. October 7th, did I say 7th? Sorry, 17th.
17th,
Um,
okay.
I did get up kind of early this morning, sorry. Yeah, October 17th was doable. She said there's some chatter about things changing around early voting, but she thought that the earliest she'd be required to be doing it would be the previous Saturday. So it wouldn't have been going on for that long and as much tallying to do. And so anyway, she was amenable to the 17th, which was fine with Wayne. So that is what I would propose we agree on tonight. And if something comes up that requires us to change that, we have some time, but I would like to have us move and agree that that's gonna be the date that we're currently planning on.
Yeah, I put it in for 7 PM.
Yes,
I would like to be 7.
yes, I would too. And I think our review with
Yeah.
Wayne, made it, I think that was
Yeah.
the
fine,
sense
okay.
of the group, yeah.
All
So,
right. It's in my calendar.
yeah, is this something we should, make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So who'd like to do that?
I move we set the date of the fall town meeting for Monday, October 17th, 2022,
7 PM.
at 7 PM.
I second that motion.
Awesome. All right, any more discussion? All right, well, then we're good to go with that. Great.
We need to
Wanna-
vote.
We need to
Oh,
vote.
yeah, that would be helpful. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. All righty, so now we're getting the town administrator's report, which has a lot in it. Some of which requires votes from us and some, do not. So I believe we tried to organize this, so the first part of it was more informational. So if you.
No, the first one's a
Oh,
vote.
actually, we do need to do a motion around the summer hours. All right. So, do we need to have any discussion about this,
Well,
or have people had a chance to look at the,
Do we know what their problem was with the previous town office
the
hours?
hours?
Problem, was there a problem, or they just?
Well,
Well-
it says, as reported at a prior meeting, I had held a department held meeting where there was some concern over the prior summer hours.
I think,
And then they
was
had
it one
some-
of them that,
He wanted to go an hour earlier or something.
Remember, he talked about this at,
yeah, I think some of it was that the hours didn't make sense for everybody, and he wanted to find hours that would be more consistent across all departments.
Okay, that was, all right. All right, so,
so this would be, making them, this is again, starting, with Memorial Day through Labor Day. Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 3 PM, and Friday, 8:30 to 12:30
I
PM.
move the select board establishes those hours from effective Memorial Day to Labor Day,
Is there a
Twenty
second?
twenty-two.
2022.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, so,
I just can you explain again why this was to consolidate, who recommended, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't
Oh.
pay attention on this.
In the
Steve
past,
Ledoux.
yeah,
In the past, excuse me, the, town administrator has typically come to the board and recommended summer
Summer
hours. So
hours,
We've
okay.
always had a change in the hour. well,
Okay,
at
so
least-
we've always done it.
and it's mostly because people leave Friday afternoon. I mean, town residents leave.
Right,
and So there's
not
no business
surface,
here.
right.
And,
but it doesn't mean people don't work.
it doesn't
a
mean,
full
yeah.
Friday, right? They just don't have, it's
right,
not
it
open to
just-
the public.
It's
at
just
that-
not open to the public,
Hours, yeah.
right?
So that's not necessarily clear. We know that from historic folkloric. That just means the hours it's open, right?
The town hall hours, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so it says the following town hall hours,
right.
right?
Right, okay. And staff works whatever their
And,
Required.
and just recently, we had an issue where one department did not have the same town hall hours as the rest of the departments in the town hall, which kind of created a little brouhaha. So,
They're still doing that, I think. They're doing
no,
it.
I believe that this is now consensus of all the hall departments. So I'm assuming that,
You know,
they're all going to be-
I actually wouldn't make that assumption. I think that was a consensus that the town hall should be open those days. I think there's still an issue
That
that
they may
certain
not have a-
department
they-
decided,
we don't have,
and they have reason, and they're very passionate about it, that, you know, hey, we
You're
just-
only gonna take,
we're only gonna take public, you know, on these days, and
Yeah.
these other days we catch up on our work.
Well, in this motion, we're setting the town hall hours to these hours.
right.
yeah,
This is
Not
what they
really
have to.
about,
right.
This is
Not
not
yet.
about the
But
employee
I
work
had-
schedule.
I guess I was
correct?
inferring
Okay.
from this that everybody,
I
would-
wouldn't make that inference.
Okay.
I think we can't do that anyway, that's. a
All right.
way to-
all right,
right.
So this is
Well,
just the
there's-
town hall hours, not
Yeah.
the employee work.
If
schedule.
you wanna,
Well-
right, if you need to come in and register your dog, you need to know that, and you wanna come in at 1 o'clock on a Friday,
It's not gonna happen.
not
Won't
gonna
be
happen.
able to do it.
You know, other things also always anyway, depending if the person's in. I mean, you might come from something and the assessor's out assessing or something, so.
And some departments do allow you to call ahead and make an appointment outside of these hours.
Right, correct.
Because they are here.
Right, yeah.
All righty,
so
so,
there's a motion on the,
yes, and
Okay.
it's been seconded, so unless there's any more discussion, we'll do a voice vote, please. All those in favor of these summer hours, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries unanimously. The next one is just for information about the, hazardous waste, day, which
Yeah.
will be set for September 17th at the DPW site. The next one about the Cellular weights and measures. So Steve had reported to us before that, you know, because of our population size, we now have to find our own way of getting and they're really just
Hey,
two
regionalization,
scales.
right here.
Yeah, there you go. So they're just two scales in town, which I think are both at Ferns. So he's in discussion with Acton about it, but it hasn't been finalized. The town clock repairs, this is, again, just information about, $5,000 being, transferred to allow the town clock to be, have some major work done on it.
this is,
And the FinCom
yeah.
approved the request on May 9th.
this is not the first 5,000 we've spent on this clock. It's not on the clock itself, but we had to fix the
We have to fix
cradle,
The whole cradle. we had
the
to
cradle and
fix the
stuff. So,
whole-
Yes.
yeah, so,
Yeah. We
Right.
spent a lot of
So-
money on that.
yeah, we have been spending money on this for a while.
Yeah.
All CPC so far. I don't know why this isn't.
Oh, what?
CPC, it was all,
It wasn't allowed,
yes.
yeah, this, because they did try.
historical.
did they ask the CPC for money?
I asked Steve about this and he said it didn't qualify. Now, I didn't go into
That's
any
so hard to
detail,
believe.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, the old playground equipment, he's just put it out to auction on the municipal site to see if we can get somebody to come, take it and pay us for that
I'd
privilege.
be amazed if
At the
anybody
clock.
did, but okay.
And then, so this one we do need to vote on, which is a one-day wine and malt license for the COA for a function they want to hold on June 21st. And there is more information in the packet if you wanted to see more.
I move the select board grant a one-day wine and malt beverages license pursuant to MGL Chapter 138, Section 14 to the Carlisle Council on Aging for an event to be held at 66 Westford Street, Carlisle, Mass. On June 21st, 2022, from 5 PM to 7 PM.
Yeah.
Subject to the applicant providing a host liquor liability insurance certificate. And I noticed that it was already signed off by the police chief.
Yes.
Yes, we used to sometimes do it also contingent on that, and at a certain point, we said, no, we wanted it done. Police chief sign off before we.
All right, so you've made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
I'm just
Great.
explaining and the other thing, Travis, on these liquor license is that it's always subject to the liability insurance because the liability insurance needs the liquor license to have been given to, by us before they can do it. So that's why it's in that order.
That's the order. that has to
Yeah, I mean,
follow.
they can't get the liquor license before, I mean, they can't get the insurance before we give the liquor license. So that's why it's always contingent on that.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, if there's no more discussion, let's take a voice vote on this. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, this carries. Then the aerial mosquito control, aerial spraying, opt-out mosquito control. So the Board of Health is recommending that we not opt out of the state aerial spraying for this year, which we have done in the past. We've
I
opted
couldn't
out.
have used last year's plan. I mean,
Yeah,
what's the
And
big,
so I believe, isn't there something in the packet? I apologize, I didn't look carefully at the second version. But there was something from Linda, Fantasia, the health
Did it appear?
agent.
I don't remember saying
Did you get
anything.
anything more?
I don't remember.
Let's
seeing
see.
You just, there's a thing in the packet.
There is?
Yeah, there was
I
a
didn't-
memo. It's just a very,
Doesn't say anything really.
no, it's a
Doesn't say
very
any more
short
than that.
memo.
I honestly
Have
don't
we,
see it.
have we sprayed in the past that way, or are we up?
No,
we.
No, we've
not
opted
sprayed.
out.
We've always opted out.
Yeah,
This makes me super nervous.
Sorry?
This makes me super nervous. You know, it's like, I think people are going to care.
They are
yeah,
gonna
I think
care.
they are gonna
Yes.
care.
I think, when is
think-
Board of Health's next meeting? I should know that.
But didn't we, I thought does your packet, and mine does not, I don't know,
nothing
maybe
from that.
Jen, hey, Jen, let me ask you if you don't mind, do I recall this correctly, that Linda had sent a further explanation about this mosquito control opt-out?
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually trying to find it while you guys were talking.
Yeah. And did that get, I thought that got sent out with the second version of the packet.
I
Is
thought
that
it did too, yeah.
Yeah,
This actually says the Board of Health does recommend that the Select Board consider looking into a plan for next year. What does that mean?
yeah, what? And it get approved, so the issue, it has to be approved by EEA by,
2nd of May, which is already.
it's already
kind of-
passed.
Yeah, so this whole thing, we should have been, let me
Oh,
put
no,
it to
if
you
we
this
were to
way.
Come up with our own mosquito control management, that would have had to have been, but I think we can still opt out. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you know what, let's,
Yeah,
table
the
this.
I know a memo did come in late Friday. I thought I had included it. Let me.
I don't see it in mine.
Yeah,
Let me take,
you want to follow up on this with the Board of
I've got
Health?
a bunch of things I have to.
Okay,
I just worry, this has been something we've done every year. We've done to suddenly
It's a
just
big
say
change.
it's a massive change.
Yeah.
And I am certain that there are people in town who would be upset if we were to
Yeah.
just say, okay, let's just let it all be
willy-nilly
sprayed.
changes, yeah, and I'm
And
not sure,
If we have to look into a mosquito control thing, we need to have a little more lead time.
Yeah.
When did they know about this, you know?
Why would we do it? We've never done it in the past.
Well, it seems to, I'm trying to remember,
Do
but
you have to do one or the other? You either have to have an approved plan or you have to spray. That's
opt
what
out,
this says.
no, oh,
No, the other
No.
way. They seem to be inferring.
right, that you have
that
to have a
you
plan,
either have to have a plan or we're gonna spray you.
yeah,
That's your choice.
and I don't recall that being the case.
No, I don't either.
no, I do recall that there have been other years where we have said we are opting out because we have this, you know, we've subscribed to this other plan or whatever, or, and,
What's wrong with
and,
last year's plan?
and in fact, didn't
Yeah.
they come to us, they wanted, because there was a question, did we join this mosquito thing? And that was gonna cost money, and then they were gonna spray, and we didn't have a choice, or, I've forgotten, unfortunately, all the
There's a memo, I'm
details.
trying to open it from Jen here.
I don't understand why this is.
Yeah.
Right, so let's
Okay,
table this,
get more
Pending-
information.
yeah, get more information, we can
Public
revisit
meeting.
it,
Let's just read what Jen sent.
okay,
From the
and,
Board of Health dated May 20th. At a public meeting held on May 16th, the Board of Health discussed whether the town of Carlisle should apply to opt out of aerial or other mosquito control spraying conducted by the State Reclamation Mosquito Control Board. Aerial spraying would only be done if the Mass Department of Public Health issues a certificate of public health hazard due to an elevated arbovirus risk such as EEE. The deadline to apply is May 27th. That means apply, where's that?
By
confusing?
Friday, right?
Yeah,
Apply to opt out. Because of the short time frame and not being a member of this mosquito control district, the board does not recommend that Carlisle apply to opt out. So,
okay, so they would
Okay.
only spray if there's like, if
right,
there's
so
a
let's,
triple
she
E.
goes on. The reasons are as follows. To opt out, a municipality must first have an alternative mosquito management plan approved by the executive office. Blah, 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 blah. This plan must include a historical review of triple E risks to the community in preparation of an alternative mosquito management plan that includes a minimum of 3 educational and outreach activities. Maybe that's something new. Since, she means because most of Middlesex County is classified by the state as high risk for triple E, the plan must demonstrate that Carlisle can perform significant mosquito control measures and interventions similar to those of the SRMCB, which is the State Reclamation and Mosquito Control Board, such as adulticide, applications, both aerial and ground. Carlisle is not a member of the mosquito control district, so the above interventions would be difficult to conduct. The
Okay,
board does recommend that the town consider preparing for next year by exploring. So I think what she's saying is, we
okay,
need to buy ourselves a year, don't opt out, because that'll create a whole bunch of havoc. You know, the minute we opt out, they're gonna be, where's your plan, what are you doing? We're like, we don't have it ready. So just be quiet and hope it goes away. That's what I'm.
And that it only happens if the spraying only happens if the state determines that there's a high risk.
But they could, because we're in a
Yes.
county that has high risk.
Right,
and we're entering-
Right.
Although, aren't we kind of late into I haven't heard a lot of triple E stuff.
oh, that,
Usually
no,
it's
triple E
April.
is later, no,
It's usually in the summer.
yeah, it's later,
Black Friday season right now.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's coming. Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so that's probably the answer, but I'll get
Alright.
clarification. So the question is, do we have to take action?
no, but we have to put it on our to-do list because we need to get a plan for next year.
No, that I get, but do we have to, this deadline is like
29th.
27th.
27th, it wasn't 5/2, yeah, it says 5/2,
Oh, to apply. So that she's
Yeah.
saying she recommends we don't apply.
We don't have
Right.
time to apply.
So we
Right.
don't apply. We just be quiet. So
we
she's
have to
saying,
do
don't opt
anything.
out, which means you don't have to do anything.
So, right,
Do anything.
right.
right,
That's the best.
But at the end of that, David, did they say the select board? I thought
No.
what you just read, that it recommends that the board, and I
Yeah,
think.
she means her own
Their
board.
board.
She means her board, right?
no, it says, and I will read it again here.
Oh, no, it's to
Board
the
of
select
Health
board. Actually, I take it back. You're
Recommends that the select board considers looking into a plan for next year, because it will cost us money undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Because we opted out of that region and all this other
Right.
stuff, and that, I bet
We
you that
gotta-
region has a
Oh.
plan.
Right.
Why does
Barney,
that
in
not
our-
come to the
in
Board
our-
of Health with this?
Yet to
I-
be developed calendar of, we gotta get them in here
Exactly.
early, because,
Exactly.
I mean, I got this question here, like, when do we go back to this? Right?
So I think, David, when you're talking to them, ask them why they would not develop the.
Yeah, absolutely.
The plan.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was saying to Barney, we haven't yet developed our calendar for the coming year of when we're gonna have boards in, but I think they gotta be like one of the first boards we talk to, because of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in the same way that we've been in, the last year, trying to get different boards in,
Uh-huh.
just for general update and sort of goal sharing. Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Boy,
then
Steve
we
has
are,
missed the most exciting PA reporting.
no kidding, no kidding. I know, and
There's a lot going on
he was
here.
trying to get out the door on Monday and Tuesday, get everything wrapped up, and all this new stuff was popping up.
Yeah, well,
All right, so we are not gonna take
I
any
hope we get
action.
Somebody half as good as him for our
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah, me too. All right, we're not taking action on this item, but David is gonna follow up with the Board of Health.
Recommendation to establish a
Okay.
behavior management committee.
Now,
Oh, committee?
yeah,
Can't they create a subcommittee on their own?
Well, I bet you need COMSCOM, Board of Health, but we should, again, I wouldn't do anything about this until we see them
Yeah.
and find out what the heck, why, what is
you're talking
triggering
about the
this.
Beaver Committee.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now,
You know-
is there not another, there's not a proposal in our packet?
No,
about
there-
that?
No,
Okay.
um,
Because Jen, again, because I know Linda had promised that she was gonna provide, a draft charge.
it was supposed to come from Kathy Gallagher, but I kept checking the email all day Friday, it didn't come in.
Didn't get anything, okay. So I think we also table this. then.
Yeah.
We need more information about
I'm,
this one.
I'm wondering if it, like, the beaver, they put the beaver deceiver, on there and a couple of houses, the water had gotten up
Yes.
so high that it
Yes.
was, backing up
Right.
their septic
Right.
Right.
into their well. So I'm wondering if that's what this is all about. But, this has to be a I think, okay,
And that's
let's find
correct.
out
Yeah,
more.
let's wait and we'll,
let's find
we'll
out who
put
needs
this
to be-
on for the, June 14th meeting.
Yeah.
And give Steve a
I have the
chance to,
feeling we're gonna have a bunch of new committees and we should get rid of some of our old ones.
yeah.
There's a lot of that.
All right, so let's move on to the, next item though, which is the, I believe the Wilson Chapel is next, right? On his report.
Sustainability grant.
Number
No,
nine.
sustainability
Well,
grant,
it's just informational.
all
Right, about the coordinator, right?
yeah,
They're gonna
okay.
extend the deadline for applications.
right.
Because they were hoping to get some stronger candidates. All righty, and then is the, sorry, I think I'm looking at an old version, is the Wilson Chapel being
Yeah.
open during Memorial Day next?
Where is the Wilson Chapel?
In the
It's in the
cemetery?
cemetery,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I
Nice
seen,
building right in the
I
middle.
move the select board approve the request of the Historical Society to open the Wilson Chapel to the public on May 29th from noon to 3, and on May 30th from 8 to noon.
Second.
All right, it's been, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, let's go with a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
I move we
Then-
approve the recommendation of the interim town administrator to remove the Salvation Army bins from the transfer station.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's a great idea.
The Transfer Station Action Committee is the one that have
But
worked
he-
through this
he
and the
recommended
DPW is
also.
fully in support. So if there's no further discussion, all right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Then we have the Tour de Cure. And this one, there's a lot of information.
Yeah, I have to
Um,
say, I was impressed by the amount of planning that went into this
We do that
one.
every year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we don't have a motion in front of us, but this
Uh,
was informational. Because,
Well,
or
if
do
they
we,
want
did
it,
we
right?
have a specific motion? I don't believe so, because, I think part of it says they're gonna get back in touch with the chief.
closer to the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think,
shall we approve this in concept? Pending further discussion with the police chief?
sure.
They're asking for permission. So I move that the select board approve the, request of the Tour de Cure, bicycle,
Yeah,
tour through Carlisle as outlined in, tonight's packet,
yeah, you want,
The
on,
date is,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it's
date
August
on
21st.
Sunday, August 21st.
2022, okay, second.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
All right, if there's no discussion, I'll go with a, voice vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. Okay, that it on the,
We have the meetings, upcoming meetings.
right, oh yeah, so let's look at the draft agenda for June, 14th.
On number 4, can we expand that, code of conduct for volunteer board members? I actually sat today and wrote myself a list of things about committees and recruiting and, leadership and supporting committees, because
Uh-huh.
one of our goals was to better support committees, and so I've been thinking about it and what I'd like to see us think of, so I'd like to kind of roll all that in. to this conversation if possible.
Yeah. And on this, so we're looking at the draft agenda for the 14th, and that's item number 4.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be helpful, Kate, I'd be happy to work with you on this, because this is something I've thought about too, but I think it'd be helpful if we had some kind of a draft, before we get into the conversation.
For the code of conduct.
Yeah, and I don't know if there,
Actually, last year I already gave one. I produced one last year.
Produce it
I'll
again.
have
well,
to
let's
see
pull it
what-
up and see if
Yeah.
it's,
Did we follow it?
I'm not sure it
We're
went
not sure we gave it
anywhere.
out. We should be giving
Kate,
it
I
out.
think you produced it with the goals discussion.
Yeah, I think I did too. I
Okay,
copied it. I
Yeah.
figured no use,
yeah.
reinventing the wheel.
Yeah,
I
let's
think-
let's take a look at that. I do know that one of the questions, and this may be something that, town council needs to advise us on, but, it's been raised, and we had some discussion about this last fall, which is the, what happens if a board member, a member of a board that we've appointed is not following the code of conduct? And I don't think we have anything clear about what the consequences are.
Yeah,
And,
You're
Right.
talking about non-elected boards. Right.
correct,
Yeah.
right, where we've appointed the volunteers or,
Elected
and then
board, you
that
have to have a
group
recall.
has elected a chair and,
yeah,
if that's not working out,
yeah.
how you handle that.
It's not
So,
just board members, right? It's committees.
yeah, it's every,
Yeah.
right, all the volunteer boards and
I-
committees.
Yeah, but I think also some of this, some of the behaviors that I've been hearing, some of it's because there's not enough support for these committees, and they are just straight out and working really hard, and they take it out on one another after a while. So that's why I wanted to talk,
Do
have
we
a
have-
broader conversation about the kind of support that
Yeah.
some of these committees can, both staff, financial,
What can they expect as resources?
what can they expect as resources?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Getting
part
right
of it.
back to, should we have a beaver committee,
Yeah,
right? It's like
exactly.
we create committees and then we give them no guidance.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right, and also new members come in and I don't know what kind of guidance they get. I
Right,
don't know
and-
what kind
or-
of
and
training
they-
they get.
And are they
So-
all
right.
getting the same
Right.
orientation?
I mean, I think there's been,
Yeah.
maybe not quite zero, but very small number where there's like non-compliance
Right.
or
So I had,
it's not that, it's like, okay, this is like, one of the things, for example, sorry, is social media conduct, right? So
Yes.
I notice
yeah,
when some people who are on boards, and some of those people should actually know better, weigh in on social media sites, and they should just be
Yeah.
instructed that once you become you're an official extension of the government, you gotta not do that,
Yeah.
that's just guidance.
so I had I said, well, maybe every year we should have a freshman class,
Yeah,
the
right.
freshman class on
Right, like
you
an
know,
orientation.
orientation, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
And,
that's-
when you're being sworn in, Peggy says, all right, such and such a night, freshman class, you gotta be there.
Yeah, yeah, I've thought that would be a really good idea. And then you might also want to do that for people that become the chair of a board,
Well, that,
right? Some introductory, that's all,
That-
you know.
Definitely, yeah, there definitely should be guidance for chairs,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
and I don't know, is there a handbook? I know that we have one, right? And we did one at school committee, we create a handbook for new members.
yeah,
It's open meeting law handbook, I think that's handed out.
anyway,
Yeah.
okay,
Um,
yeah.
Could I just,
all right,
couple
so,
comments on
yeah.
the
Is it
agenda,
on this or?
Yeah.
on the agenda?
Yeah,
But,
on this
but is
item.
it off of the, what,
This is number 4, which
No,
is
it's
what
not on.
Kate was bringing up to expand. So let me just, Kate, it sounds like we're talking about not two things that are related but different, which
Well,
is,
you're
right.
right. It is and
one
it
is
isn't
sort of the,
because,
sup- okay, but
you
if we
know.
want to fold that all into this
may not be, it's
conversation.
more orientation of, not
Yeah.
code of conduct.
Yeah, I
Code
would
of
say
conduct is a sub-
orientation for volunteer
But
board.
that's a
members,
big
and then-
lift. I don't know if we're gonna be A, ready, and B, it's definitely not.
I think we
20
should
minutes.
discuss what things we want to,
Yeah,
Let's do that.
okay,
Now,
but you're
Otherwise we
saying you
can't get
think we
started.
need more than 20 minutes.
uh,
You said you wanted to expand it, so
well,
that's
okay,
what I'm asking.
yeah,
So-
If we all come prepared, now that we've kind of had this little discussion, if we each come prepared with items
That we think
that
are
we think should be
necessary.
on there, and then we can task
Okay.
somebody, Kate, to come up, and then we go to work, right? Then we have to go to work and actually pull some materials
Yeah.
and stuff.
Okay, so that's item number 4 that we're going
Okay.
to, 20, let's see if we can, when David and I go through this with, Jen and, Steve, we'll see if we can give it a little more time. Okay, Nathan, you had another, thing about the agenda?
Kind of directly related to what you just said. I don't,
Okay.
I always worry about having too much time for things. It's always better to go over
Yep.
than have to wait. I think 40 minutes for annual, appointments is way too much. And only 20 minutes potentially for for preparing for the interviews might be a little too little.
Yeah,
But it might be okay, 20 minutes, and you put the other thing.
right.
But then the other comment I wanted to make is, I think before we get too far out of this last, year, because our year isn't the fiscal year, right? Our year is the election year.
Right.
I think we should get on our agenda as quickly as possible, a review of last year's goals and coming up with this year's goals. I think that should be a super high priority.
Yeah, I agree with that, but typically, at least in the recent past that I've been involved in, we set a whole summer session simply to do that, right?
We did for future goals, but not for
Yeah, the review we
the
did. as
review of the
part
goals.
our
I think we
regular-
want to do it as soon at the end of the year as possible.
Then we
So I
had a-
think
then we
everybody,
had that sessions with, Mark
I would
Way.
suggest we get a copy of those goals if we
Yeah.
don't all have them and,
Yeah.
and we self-assess ourselves
Yeah.
and we come back here and we say, this is our self-assessment, but we've all done our own self-assessment of
Right.
those goals.
Good
That would
idea.
help us with that next,
Yeah, well,
I've
that's,
never, did we, I guess we did last year have
we
the
did.
offsite. I think that was the second year of that.
yeah, right.
For the
I don't think I
offsite?
have a copy
Well,
of
it's
those,
not really
so if you
offsite.
can make sure I
It's
get a
just
copy. that'd be
dinner.
great.
Oh, yeah.
Could be, actually, a meeting can be anywhere in town, is that the rule or not?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
could be even out of town. It just has
Is
to
that
be
right?
posted. Oh, yeah.
Really? It can be out of town?
Well, at least the reference that I was given by,
Oh.
Tim
Oh,
Holt was that they had, I've forgotten
We
where they
used
went.
to, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
see, I don't think you can do
I don't
that
think you can do
anymore.
that because you
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah,
It's a
well,
public
then,
meeting.
No, in fact, I believe at one
I
point.
think it has to be in a public building. I don't even think it could be somebody's
Yeah,
house.
we could do it like at the
Library.
Concord, well, no, I know, but the Concord municipal, the light,
Municipal Light Building?
building has a really nice conference room.
Well, you know what
and-
else? The
and-
church at St. Irene's, which we use for the screening interviews. Have you guys been down in that facility?
Yeah.
The
There's one.
downstairs, they call it the basement, but it's a beautifully, done basement that has,
Yeah.
probably 8 little separate meeting rooms and a nice little library with a table and, anyway, we can worry about that when we
Yeah,
get to it.
but
Let's do the review of our current goals,
Okay,
at a June meeting, and I think we can do it on the 14th, and then we can also then identify whether we're gonna have the development of our goals going forward, is that we'll do it at a regular select board meeting, or whether we're gonna create some kind of separate goal-setting session. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Anything else on this,
well,
agenda?
just for preparation for the annual appointments, I just want to alert everybody that my appointment to the MFC and to the Housing Trust, both of those are up, at the end of June, as the select board representative to those committees.
Right,
And next year will be my last year, my term, and I have not decided whether I'm going to run
Okay,
again.
but
But
that would-
But I just,
that would
I'm
be
just,
part of- Well, that's kind of why there's
I'm-
30 minutes, right? Because there's going to be all this.
okay, but I just want to alert people so that they can start thinking before then, so as that
Recruiting, you're recruiting.
yeah.
yeah. Now, remember, we've got 2 separate things on here. If you look at number 3, that's the select board liaison assignments. Now, we don't have the timing
That
right on
won't be
this, because
fine.
we've only
We'll
done,
figure it
so
out.
we'll redo the timing, but that's the discussion that we all have about our assignments to be liaisons to
Right.
various boards and committees.
Right, but she's
We-
appointed.
But a
Right,
couple
but
of those
you're- but-
liaison assignments
Right,
are
you're
not assigned to
appointed.
anybody
They should be-
else because I'm
Exactly.
So
on
they
the
should be,
committee.
we'll fix
So
it.
that's-
They should be all.
I
So
just wanna-
we'll redo the timing on these, but,
Okay,
just to go back to the liaison assignments though, so we've all gotten the list. There may be a couple of additions, right, because of committees that are
the
probably
master
gonna
plan
be,
implementation committee
yeah,
and the.
if we go that
Beaver
route,
control
right?
the
Right,
beaver control.
so we'll adjust that, but they're gonna be two separate things, and then in the meantime, and Travis, maybe you recall this from being on the ZBA, but typically Jen sends out something to all the existing members of committees and boards whose appointments are due to expire or end, do they want to be reappointed? And then similarly for people whose terms are continuing, just to double check that everybody's continuing and no one's planning to resign. So we have that information, and in theory, we'll be doing a chunk of appointments that night, and a lot of times committees, we don't have all the information back, but we'll start that process of doing appointments that,
Yeah,
at
and
this
I
meeting.
have two resignations on the housing trust,
Yeah,
so that I already know
You
about.
had some
okay, but
precedent
that's
from-
in the,
Yeah, but we'll get that to that.
yeah,
later.
all right, so, any other suggestions about this agenda?
No,
Yeah, but-
okay.
All right, but of course,
Before we go off town administrators report,
sure,
never mind, it's in consent agenda. I want to make sure we didn't
yeah.
miss
yeah,
this, but it's in
yeah.
consent agenda.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, all right, does anyone here have a report they want to give as a liaison?
There's this other upcoming, so I want clarification.
What are you pointing to?
Right below right where you are, at the bottom of your screen.
Oh, yeah, about the select board
So,
meetings, yes,
Some of
thank
us
you, I'm
are-
glad
we're
you
all
pointed
invited.
that
Are we
out.
all invited? We're all invited for Thursday, the 2nd, right, to listen to the auditor.
Yeah, so this
Oh.
is a follow-up, right? We had the conversation, here at the select board meeting, maybe a couple of meetings ago, and then agreed for a follow-up, more in-depth discussion, which Kim has set up.
But we
Um,
need that report. Well, we
yes,
don't need it
and
the night
didn't-
before. It's
I
a big
thought she
report.
sent it. She
I-
just sent it.
Did she
didn't
just send it?
I think I
I thought
remember
she had
seeing
sent it
I just
too.
didn't open
We
it
should
yet.
send it in paper
and-
format.
Maybe my bad then.
She should
can't
send
read
it
it,
in
yeah.
paper format, yes,
Yeah,
right, remember, because you can't,
Oh, yeah, right,
you
right.
can't read it.
right,
We
that's
need-
right.
I do
So,
want to point out that there were things in that report that I think were in error. I will not be able to be there. I'm not going to be in the country.
Oh,
But I think I sent it to many of you. Some of the things we have fixed since then, but there are things in that report that are just inaccurate. We
You
did,
could resend that.
we did have a password policy that met that, and they did give the evidence. We did have,
Should correct it.
a penetration test, and they were given that. Those are the two things that we did have, and then there's other things that we have implemented since. I've sent it to Kim, I've sent it to Kelly. And I think I sent it to you, or I didn't want to send it to the whole board, because that would be a violation of open meeting law.
well, it's not because it's just giving
Oh,
information.
But,
we weren't-
so I just wanted to, just want to
Right,
make sure
make
I
sure
can
that-
summarize it and send it to all of you.
Could you please?
But
Yeah,
there were things in there that I feel were inaccurate.
And so they corrected some of them, but not all.
I have heard nothing. I've not been in direct connection with Clifton Larson. I've
So,
only been.
Barney, you're gonna be communicating with Kim to get.
yeah, in the absence of Steve being in town, yeah, I'll follow up with Kim.
Yeah.
It'd
and
just be
so
nice
what
to
we-
pull them out if we could.
Yeah,
We should do, no, it should be.
so, and Nathan, you've sent to Kim the things that have been
Kim
done.
and Kelly, right?
Yeah,
I
Kelly.
saw, I think I saw something from you, Nathan,
Yeah.
at one point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
And
I
then
also,
the
I
other
did
is
the
to get a paper
SSAE
copy
audits.
of the,
Should have to-
I did the SAE audits, that was after the report, it's still draft, but I did do those for two of the applications that we use. I think they're the two biggest ones, but I never got the one for the other one.
okay,
yeah, so whatever.
we'll locate that. Actually, you know what, would you mind just sending the memo to Jen, and then?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be good, and then we can get that for whomever needs to have it.
Then the second line item.
Okay,
did you
but
pick
hang
it?
on, I want to go back over to June 2nd for a second, because the idea would be that then the board approves the final audit. And that Kim was, if there as long as there are 3 members of the board there on the second, this has actually been posted as a meeting.
I've got it on my calendar.
Yeah,
I was planning to be there too.
okay, so
You'd
that's,
asked.
all right, because,
You're not.
I am not able to be there either, all
Oh,
right?
I
So
have an
Nathan
8:30,
and
but I
I,
can be here by 10.
okay, all right, so that works. Great,
So-
and then this,
Dave is chair, you're chairing. You'll be chair then.
Oh, okay, I'll share. Thank you for reminding me.
yeah,
Drunk with power.
okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
so.
And the date of the administrator interview, so we talked about this a little bit,
Right.
David, before you
Oh.
came, so what had come out of the poll that Jen did, and that we clarified with Travis, so Thursday, June 23rd,
Thursday, June 23rd.
all right, and we're going from 5 to 10 PM. And I can give you a brief update,
Yes, I was.
which is
wondering.
that the screening committee completed its work. They selected 3 well-qualified finalists. And those 3 finalists have been notified that they're a finalist, and the others that, were not chosen have been notified. And the search firm is now doing, reference checks and background checks. And they will provide to the select board a report, a electronic version, of their report on those 3 finalists. And until the select board receives that report, none of this information will be made public. So the screening committee is not authorized, they're not allowed to discuss this with anybody. And so, I'm talking with John Petrin, the consultant that we're using, about when he thinks that report will be ready and then how we'll release it, because it doesn't have to be done at a select board meeting. It could be something that just goes to the select board via email. And at that point, that then becomes a public document. And, then it is our discretion about when we make that public, but clearly, when we set the date for this and post it, we'll be indicating the 3 finalists, who
Will that
they
be
are.
by the 14th meeting? Will that-
I think we will have it by the 14th.
Is
In
that-
fact,
no, we will-
actually, I'm sure we'll have it by the 14th.
We probably
14th.
wouldn't post this until the Friday before the 23rd, right?
Correct, right.
It won't be public until,
And and question is if we on the 14th of June, we could receive it then actually at our select board meeting on the 14th,
that's what
and then it does become public. And so,
And will
you
that
know-
report also include their CVs and their?
Yeah,
their-
the
okay,
whole works.
The whole works,
Yeah,
okay.
yep.
I have one question, I don't know if you can answer it or not, but did you pick 3, finalists because, you felt you needed to pick 3 finalists? Or did you pick 3 finalists because they were the ones that rose the top? Or did you look at, think about doing a 4th one? I'm just,
Right,
I'm trying to gauge,
Yeah,
uh,
I can say that it was a very strong pool of candidates, and that we, narrowed the original pool down to a group to do actual face-to-face interviews with. And out of that group, it was very difficult to arrive at just 3. So, but the strong advice from the consultant was that that's an appropriate number. And I guess I can, and that if we were to choose more, you run the risk of some of those candidates who, once it becomes public, would need to tell their current employer
yeah,
that they were looking, and some of those candidates would then say, my chances 1 out of 3 is, a
Yeah.
lot better than 1 out of 4 or 5, and they may choose not to
Yeah,
stay in the mix.
Yeah, okay.
So his advice was, go, if we had the 3 that we felt strongly about, which we did. So the screening committee is very, was very, unanimous, and
Great. That's mostly,
felt
I'm
good
just
about
trying to get a feel.
the
whether-
finalists, yeah.
My preference would be that we not get it in our packet for the 14th, because I just think it shouldn't be public record yet
Yeah.
until, I think we should get the packet when it's posted, you know, however many days, that's when we get the packet. It's still private until
Yeah,
until that meeting
I
is
agree.
open.
I agree.
I
think
agree.
It just completely eliminates any possibility of anything getting out ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
And I don't see the benefit of putting it in the 14th packet, because we're not gonna talk about it anyway.
Right,
Yeah,
So that would be, I think, just to eliminate any possibility of anything getting out there early.
uh-huh. So, now, June 20th is Juneteenth, so we can't,
the Monday.
the Monday, so the
Before the
earliest we could get
interviews.
it, maybe would be the 21st?
Oh,
Tuesday
I see what you're saying, but for the, well, wait, no. Yes, you're right. So if it's, needs to be posted on the 23rd, we probably would still try to get the packets out on Friday, right?
I would
we-
like to have it by Friday,
It's
Yeah.
still private.
I mean, typically
yes,
we,
yes,
Until the meeting's open, it's not
Right.
public record.
right.
yeah. So,
Be nice to get it the 16th
actually,
or
there's no reason
17th.
we couldn't get the packet out by the 16th, Thursday, before the weekend, because they're providing the material. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
It's their report, so there's nothing that we have to do. They have to provide it, and John's already said they will have it ready for us before that.
okay, so,
So, let's just assume that you'll get that packet, and then,
yeah, we don't want it too early, but on the other hand, I don't want it so late that I don't have time
yeah,
to sit
that you
and
have
read
to
it.
really look through it, right?
It could be the day after that,
And,
the 14th.
the other thing I want to say is that, on the screening committee, we had some discussion about how could we, I asked for advice from the group and from John about how could we as a select board get something, from the candidates that would allow us to see something more about how they might operate. Rather, because a face-to-face interview, it gives you a certain window and you can look at their background materials, but there's a lot more to trying to figure out if it's a good fit or not. So we went back and forth on a number of ideas, but the one idea that seemed to both be, manageable and not unreasonable to ask is that each candidate would be asked to submit, along with what we already have on them, provide us with a sample of work that was fairly recent, but that was not, 50 pages and was not a PowerPoint, but something short enough that we could have a chance to review it as part of this packet. So that's something that we'll have. And we should, as a select board on the 14th, one of the things we want to do, and we'll have John come, is really look through, there's a whole set of questions that he's going to provide, which they've used, in previous interviews, but where we can think about what is it for Carlisle that, might be something very specific. He's got different categories you'll see, and so that we'll get ahead of time as well. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I just want to give you a heads up that on the 14th, we do want to discuss, not just, part of that preparation is talking with John about how do we want the interviews to go, and what are some of the questions, and
Right, because
So-
last time, when we did our interim,
yes,
things, we had questions, and some of them, in fact, there's one question in particular I would like to ask again. So.
so we'll have a chance to go over
Yeah.
that with John on the
that
14th.
list, and it would, so we'll then see the questions you guys already asked? Or not?
No, well, that's a good I'm
Or
not
a list of
sure.
Those questions? so
I'm
that
not
we-
sure because there's no documentation of those interviews. There's no,
Okay,
we did it in an executive session and there are notes from the executive session, but we don't identify any candidate by name. They're just by number.
I know, but
And
this
those
is-
will not be
so
released.
you didn't ask a standard list of questions?
We
of
did.
each? So that's
We
what I'm
did.
asking
Oh, you just
for.
want the list, not the responses?
No, just a
Sorry,
list
sorry,
of
sorry.
questions.
Yes,
You didn't document them.
no. That was,
Okay, fair enough.
okay.
Okay,
All right,
As much
so,
information as you can give us.
yes, I
Yes.
think, you know.
yeah,
Any information you have, once it's public, ought to be releasable. That's
well,
part of the statement, But,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, council can help. you.
yeah, no, and John, the consulting firm knows what they're doing on this, yeah.
Okay, and I know this is sort of jumping the gun because we haven't, but I'm jumping forward to the contract negotiation and some of the things. When are we gonna discuss as a board? Like the length of contract that we think we want to ask for? One of the things I've been thinking about because of negotiations that we've been doing with the unions and, was thinking that maybe instead of in the contract having a set COLA, that it doesn't have, the contract not have a set COLA, but they're subject to the COLA that we set every year. I
Oh,
think it would
for the-
make the negotiation easier in certain respects. So you know, I've been thinking about
Yeah,
other things that we may want to have, and I think a definite thing about, evaluation, and that I think we should really be considering hiring a consultant every year or every 2 years or whatever number of, you know, to help us with the evaluation of our
town
town
administrator.
administrator, to get a 360, because again, we
You
have,
need a consultant to tell you that.
well, I don't know if you need a consultant, but
There's plenty of best practice here. You just go up to the schools. You know, it's fun. I mean, there's lots.
Well, let's,
Well,
but
anyway.
you're raising this as
I'm
something
just
that
raising
we-
this as
right,
things that I think we should think of in advance,
Right,
that we may want to incorporate into a contract.
right,
Oh, yeah, from a contractual standpoint.
Yeah.
yeah. Yep, good
I
point.
don't think we need, so does, what's the name of the John's outfit?
John Petron, the Paradigm.
Paradigm, do they give you a template of sample contracts?
Good question.
I,
Probably have them, right?
you know, I'll ask, I don't know.
I think we
Yeah.
should ask them to
Right.
provide some sample, not one, some sample contracts.
Oh,
I would also ask Tom the same question, right?
and we're gonna need an executive session, by the way, on our next,
It's in there. It's on.
in
We
there?
put it on
Okay.
the agenda thinking you might need one.
Yeah, okay.
This is for the police contract?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I understand this board then negotiates those contracts
Yep.
specifically? We do like, these
Well-
5 members, or do we have council, or I mean,
It's council, it's it's council, it's the recruiting firm that helps as well. But not always, it's like with it's the interim town administrator, I met him for lunch and we negotiated it over lunch.
Yeah, so it would not be the whole board that does it publicly, but more,
Yeah.
yeah, gets worked out by a smaller group of people.
Yeah, I had some parameters that I was working within.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this case, we didn't do an executive session and review it because it's such a short contract, but
Yeah.
in the next one where it's a longer, different relationship, there'll be an executive,
I saw that
where
on
we
the
discuss
schedule.
this.
Well, that's a different. no,
Different issue,
That's a
right.
different. issue.
But, yeah, likely a
Yes.
future select board meeting will have that executive session on it.
Right.
Right, so the dates, so make sure you have that date on your calendar then for those interviews.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
and then,
Who's buying dinner?
well, Jen said she would figure out a dinner, and so we'll
I
definitely
assume we're
have
gonna
some
be
food
having
here.
pizza, salad.
Yeah. All right. And then our regular select board meeting, we have the one on June 14th, which is this draft agenda, and then their next one is June 28th. And in the meantime, so maybe at that June 28th is when we can,
Oh,
figure out how we're gonna do goal setting, whether we're gonna do it in a regular select board meeting, or we're gonna try to set up something special.
yeah, this should be all by itself.
Should be
I
all
think
right.
it's,
Uh-huh,
What I was chatting with, maybe it was you or Barney, I can't remember, but because in the summer, we don't always maybe have to have the second and fourth.
right,
Maybe we could take one of those because, and then. the
Yeah, and-
Regular meeting would. be-
right.
Would be a month gap between 2 regular meetings, but if it's July.
Right.
So I think the first thing is actually, and we could do this, we could ask this tonight of Jen, is pull the 5 of us for vacations.
For summer plans, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Travis, you had asked me, when you and I talked, so it's not atypical for instance, if August is a time when a lot of people are in and out, that we might only have one regular meeting in August. Because we don't have 5 of us in town to, for a quorum, but, we'll see where that goes. The other thing is, remember, we're gonna be, depending on what the state does, we may be, right, we won't have the option to come in via Zoom anymore.
Oh, no, that'll.
You think that's gonna pass an extension? Well, we'll find out.
They just said the MIA is just having this thing, right? They're gonna have a whole seminar on how to
Right,
do virtual meetings, so, gee.
all right, so so are there any liaison reports?
Well, I think maybe my thing should be.
Yeah, so what-
liaison
Yeah, so why don't we move to that and not have that be part of the consent agenda, Kate,
Yeah, no,
your
I shouldn't
appointment?
be, should not be a part of the
Yeah,
consent
so why don't
agenda.
we move to that, this,
I move that Kate Reed, be appointed to the Community Preservation Committee, for a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
for a second.
Second,
Right. Kate, you wanna give us a quick
Well, okay,
fill in?
everybody thought that the $125,000 grant from CPC for the Benfield leaching field was going to be distributed by, that was going to be distributed by the Housing Trust. But the town meeting vote said that the money was going to go directly to NOAA. However, there was some slip up somewhere. I don't know what happened. NOAA never got the grant document. They never signed it. Everybody was still laboring under the feeling that the trust was going to be the one that distributed it, and the trust was no way going to distribute money until the leaching field actually got done and was operating, and we were going to do it as a reimbursement. And in fact, and the town council had said, we should do it. He had ideas about how it should be done, and so anyway, we were all laboring under this false idea that the trust was in control of this money. And then things got to a point where possibly there was going to be a lawsuit, and there was a big meeting in January so there was town council, NOAA's council, the trust was there with their council, and there was a big meeting, and it was verbally agreed that, and NOAA, as I said, was there, that the $125,000 could be used as sort of like a bond for the work that needed to be done to finish the septic and the leaching field. And that the Board of Health would see if they could get this consulting engineer back on board because he had quit. He was mad at NOAA because NOAA hadn't paid his bill. Get him back on board to do the work, and they did. And we were, all ready to pay. And I started looking at the documents and realizing, wait, we have to revise the documents. And then we ended up with a snag with revising them.
we need all this detail.
Well, I'm just telling you why.
We're ready to approve it.
So we needed to have, I think you need to know that,
We know you're not gonna pull a fast one.
well, I'm trying to protect the town and do everything in a legal way. And so the CPC is authorized to sign off on this, but the Housing Trust and the Board of Health are not. And we need to get these bills paid. And,
Nobody's on CPC now who can sign it.
Luke is still on it, but Luke
he's
is not on it.
Not on it.
No, he's not on it.
Right.
So I'm sure there's somebody else, but who am I gonna ask?
So Luke would still be on it until June 30th. That's when we appointed him till, just because he's not on the select board, doesn't mean he's not on that.
I think.
Yes, he is.
Like board's appointed rep to the CPC.
Yeah,
Appointed until June 30th.
I don't know, it doesn't.
well, anyway, this just seems
Okay.
to be easier. I'm here, I know all this history, and I know what should be signed and what shouldn't be signed, and trying to get it done.
All right. Any questions or comments to Kate? We okay then? All right, seems like we're ready to then do a voice vote on, appointing Kate as.
Yes, actually, I do have one question.
Yeah.
Are we going over the number of people who could be on CPC? Okay, so somebody has come up.
Well, I have to double check. Well,
I
the,
just don't want to get us in trouble since
Gotcha.
you're signing
Let me-
something.
let me go online. Take this off.
While you're doing that,
Yes.
why don't I move ahead to the consent agenda, which if you look at your packet, what's in the consent agenda is, the minutes. And there is also the, I'm going to go back up here. Let's walk
I
through
wonder
it.
if the fact that Maureen resigned.
She's on CAT, she's not on CPC.
Yeah,
We're
no, but
talking
she was the CAHT representative on CPC, and she has resigned.
She said she'd stay on till there was a quorum or something.
Well.
All right, so
Sam-
what you have in your packet is you have, two sets of minutes. One is the set of minutes from the, very brief meeting that the select board had prior to the town meeting. And that's designated. So we have the minutes from, Tuesday, April 19th, which was, and then we have the minutes from, the meeting that, town hall town meeting of April 25th. So those are here. The other thing that's in the consent agenda is, if you look at page 40, if you kept it all consecutive, the, the first thing in item 13. So these are the warrants that I approved, that I signed, last week with Kelly, and she's provided the sort of highlights of the different warrant articles that I signed off on. So if anybody had any questions about these, it's fairly clearly laid out. And then there's a whole series of appointments here, which I'm not gonna go over every one unless people want me to do that. And there is also, a resignation in here from, Maureen Cosgrove Deary resigning from the Housing Trust, but she'll serve until a replacement is found. And that is it in the consent agenda. So my question is, does anyone want to pull out any of those items to discuss them? I'll leave it there. Because if you do, then we'll pull that one out and then we'll approve the rest of them as one whole consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull something out?
I would just, I don't want to pull anything out, but I would, request that we not put in the appointments and the resignations in a consent agenda in the future, because I think it's good to celebrate that we have new people coming in and listing their names in public. And it's good to be able to say thank you to the outgoing people.
Yeah.
So I think that I wouldn't lump those in as something we just want to kind of fast track through.
Okay. That's a reasonable, yeah, I can understand the reasoning for that.
So, I
Um,
mean, but this packet wasn't on the website, so could we, you know, I hate to do this, but can I just quickly read through who the appointments are? Just so
Absolutely,
that people online and everything
Sure.
would know.
sure, let's
So
do that.
Chrissy O'Shea to the Carlisle Historical Commission is an appointment. Ben Herter, who's an architect, to the Historical Commission. Some of these may be, associate, I'm not gonna go into that. And there's Chrissy again. Ed Rolfe, is coming off planning board, but he's gonna, remain on Historical Commission, but not as the planning board member. He's gonna be an alternate member. That's
You have the
Ed's letter.
reappointment of Aaron Delia to
Yeah,
serve on the
Aaron
Finance
Delia.
Committee.
For the FinCom.
And then
Jason
Yep.
Want to read them? Jason Walsh, and, Rob Misick, as associate members of the planning board.
Oh, I'm sure. it's in
Maureen, and then Maureen Cosgrove Deary is, resigning from the Carlisle Affordable Housing Trust. And thank you, Maureen, for your service, and thank you, everybody else, for agreeing to either renew or come on.
I think I should just.
And then
take
did you
this.
mention Deb Tower and Jean Delano as the Carlisle Inspectors of Animals?
Uh,
That's also in here.
I did not see that, so no, I
Okay.
did not.
Right.
So they're, yeah, being nominated to, Jean would be a reappointment and Deb would be a new appointment as the Carlisle Inspector of Animals.
Okay, no.
Yes,
I don't
but
see
she
those, but
doesn't get
that's
off until
great.
2023 unless she decides not to. be
All right,
reappointed.
any other, items under the consent agenda that people want to discuss?
She's off.
Hey, you two, can you hold on one second? Thanks. Let's see if we can get this done. Did you want to pull anything out from the consent agenda?
No.
Okay. All right, so let's do that, and in the future, we will not do appointments and resignations as a part of a consent agenda so that we can acknowledge them publicly, yeah. I would like a motion to accept the consent agenda. I think the way we have to do this is accept the consent agenda, and then vote to approve it. Is that correct? Do we have to do this the way they do it at town meeting? Or we can just simply,
Do it all once.
okay. So may I have a motion, please, to accept the consent agenda?
I move that we accept a consent agenda and approve this particular consent agenda.
There's a whole motion in this thing for the consent agenda.
Oh, yeah, where do you see that?
It says, on my different pages, I move to appoint the draft meeting minutes for April 19th, 2022, and April 25th, 2022. I move to support the nomination of Deborah Toller and Jean Delano as a Carlisle Inspector of the Animals. That's where it is in here. It's in the motion. From May 1st, 2022 through May 1st, 2024. I move to appoint Ed Rolfe, 916 Maple Street in Bed Herter, 517 Bedford Road, to serve on the Historical Commission as alternate members with terms to expire on June 30th, 2025. Move to reappoint Aaron Deella to serve on the Finance Committee with a term to expire on June 30th, 2023. Move to appoint Jason Walsh, 106 Robin Drive, and Edwin Lysick, 70 Orchard Acres, as associate members of the Carlisle Planning Board with terms to expire on June 30th, 2023. And I move to accept with regret the resignation of Maureen Cosgrove Deary from the Carlisle Affordable Housing Trust, effective as soon as a replacement is found.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. And let's move to voice vote for approval of this consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
The reason why I did not read the warrant thing is we've never voted on that before, so
Right.
it seemed like.
Right.
So where did you get the advice? Because it doesn't sound like a consent agenda to me if we have to make an individual. Did Tom tell you how to do this, or?
Well, Steve and I and,
think it's right.
Jen, yeah, I'll
We gotta
double
do some
check
work on
about
this.
how to do this in the future.
Okay.
All right, so Kate,
Community
what did you,
Preservation Committee consists of 7 members, 1 member each from the Select Board, the Planning Board, the Housing Authority, the Conservation Commission, the Recreation Committee, and the Historical Commission, plus 1 member from the community.
Right, so the question is when a member rolls off, as Luke has in the case of the select board, do all his appointments as a select board rep continue? Or
I would think that,
not continue?
If it-
And I don't know the
I
answer.
would think if it's
As counsel.
specifically, yeah, I think my guess would be if it's like an appointment to a committee that's not because they're on the planning board, like, because there's a seat, I would think that that seat is vacant as soon as he's no longer,
Right,
or
so
they're
then
no
you,
longer.
then you're,
planning board,
it's a change to what you said earlier, right?
Right, well,
Okay, so then we could.
no, it's
appoint-
not. I'm saying that this is because it's actually a specific seat for the
No,
planning
that's right,
board.
that's
Yeah,
what I mean, no,
yeah.
that's what we're trying to
Right.
get at, so,
Yeah.
I mean, your point was valid, we can't appoint her illegally and then she signs it, so.
Right.
Right.
Do we all agree that it's a legal appointment for us to appoint?
I think so, but maybe just check with Tom after we do this before you sign it.
Yeah, right, that's right, go ahead.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah.
So the motion's
All right,
on
so
the
the
table
motion's
and-
on the floor and it's been
Okay with
seconded.
that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's, we've talked about it. It's
Yeah.
good.
All right, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. And I believe we have reached the end of our agenda. Did you say no?
I didn't
No.
say
Oh, right.
Not for
I
me
heard
to
you
say.
say
no.
something. All right. So
Trying to
I
make your
would,
10 o'clock deadline.
like,
Sorry, because I was doing this.
Better be important.
No,
because it's
well,
10
no,
o'clock.
it's just about the minutes. We passed them, but I made, edits to the minutes, so which I don't think made it into your packet, so I hope that the motion said as amended.
it
And
did
does
not, because it was
edit
part of the consent agenda.
Sorry,
The minutes
sorry,
were,
as I said, I was
yeah, you
kind of
were
checked out.
occupied, right? So, are they, are substantive
Well, you know,
or
when,
more?
Had Luke present when he wasn't, and he had it absent when he wasn't,
Okay,
and, then there were typos, and then there was a missing table that, you know, a sentence that was ran along and.
okay.
I would
missing.
move,
All those, the Luke one is important.
I wanna move a revote on the minutes from tonight.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we approve the draft meeting minutes for April 19th, 2022, and April 25th, 2022, as amended.
Thank you.
Second,
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so those,
Abstain.
all right, so those minutes have been, approved as amended. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
One housekeeping that's not